Here we are once again with the Reverie Roundtable. Gathered a nice group of people once again to discuss issues. Hopefully, you will find them interesting. The issues, but also the people too. But I'm pretty sure they're great. We got a bunch of all stars here, and I'm really excited to talk with them. So we'll introduce people. This is Riverboat Jack. Hey, Riverboat Jack.
Howdy.
Hey. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I've had an extremely busy day, so this is like my time to sit down and like chill out, and I'm looking forward to it immensely.
Okay. All right. Thanks for being here. You've been here on a few of them, a
Yeah.
few of my panels, and we've always enjoyed having you. So yeah, we appreciate you being around. Next is LSP, Liberal Sanity Project. LSP, how are you doing today?
Always.
Great. This is amazing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a fucking idiot. I'm all right. How are you doing, sir?
All right. Doing well. Thank you for coming through. Thanks for once again being coming in with your expert lighting that really highlights your features by like blowing them all out.
I'm fuck ugly. I'd be here without a fucking camera if you'd let me.
No way. Okay. Oh, yeah, we got someone. All right. Great. So the next person is Counterpoints. Thanks for coming through, my friend. Thanks for being on.
My pleasure. You keep inviting me. I'll keep coming back, and we'll keep rolling that until you get sick of me.
Well, definitely not. I think you're actually one of my better guests here, right? And I don't rank you, of course. I don't rank you.
I'll hold you to that in a few months.
I love all my children the same.
Sorry. And now ruining our relationship by clicking on something. My bad.
No, don't worry about it. It's cool. All right. Next, we have critically thinking veteran CTV. CTV, how are you doing this lovely day?
Pretty good about yourself, man.
Doing all right.
Troma, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it immensely.
About these interesting issues, and I'm always curious as to where you'll land, CTV. Sometimes you actually really do surprise me.
Well, when I heard that you couldn't get the number 2 conservative guy on Twitch to come, I figured that the vote was going to come to invite the number 1 guy. So.
Indeed. Yep. Yep. Thank you for saving me there. Really appreciate that. Okay. Next, we have Mixed Vivian Wolf. Mixed Vivian Wolf, thanks for being here. Thanks for coming through. Thanks for being fashionably late. What's up, my friend?
I'm always a little tardy, but you know, what's there? A wizard never arrives late, always arrives precisely when they mean to.
Funny you should say that. We were actually just discussing wizards. But yeah, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Next, Danabo. Danabo, thanks for being around, my friend. Haven't seen you. Well, we talked to you on Saturday, but before that, we really haven't seen much of you, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah, you did talk to me on Saturday.
Well, just for a little bit. We didn't really get to discuss. Like, you were here, but we didn't really get to talk, you know?
I was silent for a while and then did a thing and then left, yeah.
Then you left, yeah.
That happened.
You fucking blew up my chat, and then you're just like, oh, we're done.
Right. Yep.
Your hair's huge, dude. Like, you've got it all out and fluffed and everything. I'm jealous.
I got out of the shower and then Kurt messaged me. He's like, "You've got to be here in 30 minutes." And all right, Kurt. There's no hat today.
In last minute, really do appreciate that. Like, I was telling the audience how difficult it is to schedule these things. It's extremely fucking difficult to schedule these things. But we have some people who come through when we really need it, and Danabo is one of them. Thank you so much, Danabo.
No worries.
All right. So, and I'm excited to hear your uninformed opinion about all the things that you haven't actually read up on. Last but absolutely not least, we have Doobie. Doobie, represented by that monstrosity on the side of your screen. Doobie, the mysterious leader, owner of the Politics Discord server, right? Where you'll always find someone to argue with you about fucking anything that you can think of. Everyone, I would say give a round of applause for him, but no one does that. Doobie, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Had a pretty good week. Thank you for asking earlier. I'm still a little bit salty. I've done like interviews and stuff before, just like randomly because people bother me for them. And I did one this past weekend. And when it was posted, the guy compared me to Genghis Khan, who's like a rapist and a genocidal like warmonger. So I'm a little weird about how I feel about that. So kind of processing that, but like, other than that, I'm pretty good. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we've talked to Doobie, and you are nothing like. I don't know what you could have possibly said that might have given him this impression. Maybe was this maybe like in a like Genghis Khan is a bad guy, but like he's a conqueror, a king. Is like that maybe what they were going for in the article?
I guess he also called me Palpatine during the thing, so probably something like that.
Palpatine, a bit more like it. Okay, all right, that works. But well, yeah, I'm glad you're here. You're certainly welcome. I think you're a very interesting person and a good guy, in my opinion. So, definitely not a rapist, I think. I don't know. So moving on. I think it's a good endorsement. Definitely not a
Wait,
rapist.
how come you didn't endorse all of us that way?
He doesn't know.
I'm a bit worried.
Like I said, I love you all equally, right? Okay. And someone's DMing me. Sorry, heavily distracted now. Okay. Oh, so someone else wants to come on to the panel, apparently. All right, I'm getting DMs like really right now. I am sorry, guys. This is how this goes. Last minute DMs. If this person can come on, Kurt, then just help them on. I don't know.
Who the fuck is it? I'm so confused.
Okay, hold on. Kurt, just get them on. Just get them on. You know the all the information. Just get them on the panel. All right. Joe Lewis, we actually. Oh, hold on. Oh my God, why is this happening right now?
Because we love Joe.
Sure. Okay. All right. Great. Now we're moving on. Maybe someone else will be joining us. Maybe not. I don't know. Last things are happening here. All right. So, first topic. All right. Topic 1. During this current COVID crisis, is it irresponsible to gather with friends or family for Thanksgiving? Is it reasonable to expect that we should all have to sacrifice these opportunities to connect with our loved ones for the greater good? What do we say to those who have been experiencing mental health issues due to the isolation? If you believe it to be irresponsible, should we condemn those that do gather the same way Trump supporters have been condemned for not socially distancing at his rallies? All right. So yeah, like, is it right to say that no, you don't have the right to gather, or not have the right, but you shouldn't, and we condemn people for these things? And how vociferously should we do that? So all right, we'll start with Verbal Jack.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is an irresponsible decision to gather with friends and family during the holidays under these conditions. Like, I would say the same if we were at war and it was more likely for you and your loved ones to get bombed if you were having a party. I think that this, extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. And I think that this is a perfect example of how we shouldn't act. But given that there are no safeguards against such action, all that we really have is personal opinion on the matter. And I guess as far as that goes, sure, condemn people who are gathering if you feel like that's what you should do. But also I think that this is largely, in my opinion, a nonpartisan issue. You should critique anyone. It doesn't that's why the end of this conversation, end of this question, I just kind of reject that portion, because yeah, condemn people who are not social distancing, not wearing masks at rallies, but also condemn people in other contexts who aren't doing it, whether they're liberal, leftist, righty, conservative, whatever. I think that this is something that we need to do and pull together as a nation on to address, and I don't think it is fascist or like authoritarian to say that we should take proper precautions during a bacterial or a viral pandemic. As for people experiencing mental issues as a result of the loneliness, I think that maybe there are ways that we can alleviate that, but I'm by no means a mental health expert, and I would defer to the opinions of experts when it comes to that, I guess. So that's my stance. It's kind of wishy-washy. Sorry.
No, apologize. Okay, McSivian Wolf.
Well, you know what I think? I think these dirty, doggone liberals, they lost the war on Christmas. The Great White Hope came into office and everybody's saying Merry Christmas again. And now they want to take over Thanksgiving. I think it's disgusting. No, I mean, I'm probably going to be meeting up with my parents for my birthday, which is on December 5th. Feel free to send me presents. They're going to come down and visit, but I think we're going to be socially distancing. We're going to be meeting outside. I'll probably wear a mask for like most of it. I think you can take reasonable precautions whilst getting together with your family for the holidays. And those reasonable precautions do unfortunately preclude you from sitting in an enclosed room around a table real fucking close and getting down to Thanksgiving dinner. But like, if you're lucky enough to live in a warm part of the country, maybe you can like set up something outside where you're able to sit a fair distance away from each other, where it's less likely to spread and so on. I think everybody has to kind of make their own I think everybody has to make their own sort of calculation as to how much of a risk they're willing to take. But I do think that there's like limits. If everybody's sort of like packed together in a crowded room and everything, you're much more likely to spread it, and then you're really putting everybody else at danger if you take no precautions whatsoever. I do agree that it should be more of a social pressure thing than like a top-down thing, because it's just not going to go well from the top down. Like, nobody's going to fucking listen anyway. Conservatives in particular need to stop viewing the coronavirus as a partisan issue and start taking some fucking responsibility into their own hands. Somebody said something the other day. I think if we frame it as like a war on coronavirus, I think a lot more conservatives will be behind it. They love that shit. A war on drugs, war on crime, war on whatever. Like, then they'll be prepared to take some action. They can be true patriots and defend America against this foreign virus that's invading them.
Okay. Next, CTV.
Well, I think that everybody should just hide in their homes and don't ever go outside again. It's too scary out there. I mean, in the land of the internet, there's no reason why you just can't stay at home and get Walmart to deliver your groceries, right? And just never have to go outside. Just do some stuff on the internet to get paid to be able to earn a living, but don't you go outside, because if you do, Big Daddy Government's going to get you, right? Right? So, since all y'all actually believe that shit,
Believe
the
what,
answers to the questions are no, get together with friends and family, no.
Okay. All right. So we'll go to LSP.
Yeah. So, firstly, Vivian, I don't know if you were channeling Lindsey Graham or Jesse Lee Peterson, but that impersonation was amazing. You one thing you did manage to do successfully, and I didn't realize it because it kind of makes you seem like a time wizard, was you captured the essence of CTV, and you didn't even know you were going to do it. Yeah, no, I agree with everything CTV said for that first half, and then that second half, it's just like he got a lobotomy. So basically, that first half was amazing. Yeah, don't see your parents, don't see your family, don't see your friends, because there's a whole fucking virus going on right now that keeps killing all the elderly people. And if you're gonna get together with all your elderly parents and grandparents, you're just gonna fucking cough on them and kill them. And I'd prefer you to not kill them. Well, I mean, maybe CTV doesn't mind, but I prefer them to live. So just do what CTV says for the first half. Isolate yourself, stay safe. As that song says, stay the fuck at home.
Maybe he's got a big inheritance on the way. You don't fucking know.
Maybe he does. The real capitalist, who knows?
So I thank you, Master Super Ninja, for following me and then immediately using your Twitch Prime on the channel. That's really awfully kind of you. Thank you and welcome to the Worst Generation, whoever you are. Hopefully we get to know you. Thanks for being here. Okay, counterpoints.
Yeah, so I do think it's irresponsible to gather with friends or family, but obviously everything is a balanced risk. Is it reasonable that we expect that we should all have to sacrifice these opportunities to connect with our loved ones for the greater good? No, I don't think it applies to everybody. Like, I think everybody has to make an individual choice about what kind of risks they're willing to take. I have a young son, even though he's, healthy and strong. I can explain my rationale, but I haven't been willing to expose him to, basically the general public yet. What do we say to those who have mental health issues? I would say that it's all about balanced risk. If you're on the verge of literally committing suicide, then maybe the virus is a risk you're willing to take. If you can do medium measures, like, I don't know, hopping on a political debate panel in order to get some social interaction, then maybe you should find a middle of the road solution. If you believe it to be irresponsible, should we condemn those that do gather? I mean, like, a little bit, but not extremely hardcore. Everybody has to make their own choices about how they view this. And just to highlight the implications really quickly, so I think it's between like 2 and 4% mortality rate for the elderly. If you have comorbidities, obviously that's going to jump a little bit. And then for younger people, kind of the problem that I don't think a lot of people are addressing, especially on the conservative side, is the fact that there are extended health consequences. There are young, healthy, virile people who are basically keeping the disease for 6 months, and it's causing serious, irreparable damage to their vital organs. So is that going to be you? Who knows? But that's all a choice and a risk that we have to make individually.
Okay, Danabo.
Tanabo's brain's still ticking over because he had 15 minutes to prepare. Let's just go through the questions. I will say counterpoints. I've seen him on Ippy Dippy as well, and it's very strange for my brain to comprehend a reasonable conservative. And just every time I hear you talk,
he's a big brain centrist. That's what it is.
Yeah, I gotta say counterpoints. I've always enjoyed talking to you. You're actually fun to engage with.
Thanks.
We'll all kiss your
It
ass
was like
here.
an interaction that was really good. Let's
10-minute mute for everybody.
I don't know. I think he embodies a particular kind of IDW cancer that's fucking sickening, honestly. But
Okay, all right, stop, please.
All right, Viv. All right, so topic one. All right, let's go through the questions one by one. Is it irresponsible to gather with friends or family for Thanksgiving? It was irresponsible to gather with friends or family throughout the whole thing. I haven't left the house since January. I have been responsible, but the rest of Arkansas doesn't give a shit, and there's no point in condemning them at this point. They're just out there gathering with friends and family. They're going to have Thanksgiving. They don't wear masks. The schools are open. At this point, there's no going back. The genie's out of the bottle, and the only thing we can do now is mitigate any response from that. Is it reasonable to expect people to sacrifice the opportunities? They're not going to. So we're talking this American-centric. They're not going to. The Thanksgiving's happening whether we like it or not. What do we say to those who have been experiencing mental health issues due to the isolation? If there are any conservatives that have mental health issues during the isolation, I would like to propose to you something called Medicare for All, where you would get mental health care free at point of service. That sounds great right now, especially during a pandemic. And yeah, in regards to condemnation, what's the point? What are you hoping to gain from condemning people that do gather? Are you changing their mind by shouting at them angrily? It's the same for people that try to vote shame people that didn't vote for Biden, right? What are you trying to gain? Do you feel good shouting at people? If you do, go for it.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Doobie.
Hi. So, I mean, obviously, it's not a good idea to meet up with friends and family for Thanksgiving or Christmas. I think we're all pretty much in agreement with that so far. What I don't agree with you guys about is I don't think the social penalties are enough. I don't think just shaming someone on Twitter or, on Facebook, I don't think that's going to do it. As things are, there's been I think almost 1.4 million people in the world been killed to COVID. We have massive outbreaks all over the U.S. right now. I think that the negligence these people have demonstrated, and probably will continue to demonstrate through the holidays, makes them a threat not just to themselves, right, but to the rest of the country. And I think that threat should make them liable or make them subject to criminal penalties, up to and including jail time. Businesses, I'm in California. Businesses in California, if they remain open and they violate COVID restrictions, they're hit with fines for the first-time offenses. That fine increases if you do it again, but eventually you lose your business license. I don't see a good reason we shouldn't treat these people any differently. What I would prefer is fines for first-time offenses for every adult that's at the gathering, and repeat offenses, you lose your ability to travel freely. And if that means house arrest, if that means jail time, that's what it means. And I'm totally okay with that. And I think taking a position that's any less than that is enabling the bad decisions, the really selfish behavior that has got us into this position in the first place.
Okay. Our line stance from Doobie. And again, if you're just joining us, Doobie is the unspeakable creature on the side of your screen. All right. Next is our good friend Johnny Scarlett, who was kind enough to join us. Johnny, thanks for being here as always. Really appreciate you, friend.
Hey, thank you so much, Prime.
Yeah. Johnny, did you catch the question? Did you see?
I did, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So this is highly subjective because it's risk reward for your individual family and your individual situation. If you generally have a Thanksgiving family reunion, basically of 50 people, 20 people, then maybe if you have lots of newborns, if you have lots of very elderly people, it depends on your family situation. In my family's case, my granny literally told us she was making the decision that she had been, and by the way, this speaks to disabled communities in general. I know that part of the question addresses like, what if you're having some mental health issues due to being isolated in COVID? If you're disabled, you're generally isolated most of the time anyway. So COVID has only heightened this for these people. My granny is one of those people, and she made the basically moral decision on her own part. She was like, there's only 8 of us, and I want you guys to come and be outside. So we spent all of Thanksgiving outside, and we all wore masks. I felt really good about it. My mom was super hyper vigilant, like literally pouring Germ-X in people's hands. I'm not kidding. Like, so we made a decision based on our individual family group and the number of people we had. And I think that these guidelines have been set out for us so that we can follow them. Groupings of more than 10 people, not wearing a mask, being inside, those are all things that we can avoid if we so choose. And the problem is that there are people who are going around that and saying, well, we so choose to have a group of 50 people inside of a house without masks. And that's largely the problem. Is there anything else about the question in particular?
Or should we condemn people who?
Well, that's social contract, isn't it? We do that all the time. We put in place certain acceptable behaviors, and a lot of the country has decided that public mask wearing, especially in a business that clearly states before you go inside that you have to have one, you know, that's something that we've decided as a community that business can kick you out. Like, people can look at you with disdain if they want to. Like, that's just their right.
Okay. I have lots of ways I'd like to take this question, but I'm going to open it to the floor first. Does anyone want to?
I think a lot of people.
CTV and Doobie go. They were like
I think a
polar
lot of
fucking
people
opposites.
Said it's like an individual thing, but it's not. Your actions impact upon the wider community. I think that's something that like people need to recognize. Is like if you spread it to your dad or your gran or whatever, there's a fair chance they might spread it to other people. You know, it's not just your family unit that's at risk.
Well, and that's
That was my big issue with I'm sorry, that was my big issue with Counterpoint's opening, which is it's like you got to make a personal decision for yourself about what kind of chances you can take. The issue is people are taking chances for the rest of us too. Like it's not, if they were just like isolating themselves after Thanksgiving, that would be great. But I assume at some point they're gonna have to go out and interact with somebody else, or that they're gonna, at some point they're gonna be interacting with somebody else, at least within the whatever week period it is between the time symptoms take to set in. So I don't think it's unreasonable to say you shouldn't be going out, even if you're willing to take that chance for yourself because you're healthy and you're sure you won't catch it. That doesn't mean you can't spread it.
Yeah, it's pretty unreasonable.
Well, and just to explain why it's unreasonable or why I think there's more ammunition to that side than most people would give it credit for, like we are making like part of the problem with like Doobie's perspective, I guess, is that having that top-down hierarchical control, applying rules universally to people, like there's situations that don't necessarily make sense. So I'm fortunate enough that I'm able to make a living by staying at home. I have a job that allows me to do that, work remotely, make enough in order to pay my bills. But I worked in the service industry for decades. I have friends who are in the service industry for decades, and I'm expanding this obviously past Thanksgiving specifically. But there's economic and social choices that people are making in order to survive the way that they see fit. And what I'm worried about with Doobie's perspective specifically is it's not so much the disease or the deaths or anything like that. I think this would be the conservative or the libertarian fear. It's the top-down hierarchical decisions that you are unable to act against because it's an exigent circumstance. Now, I'm actually sympathetic to the person who said that, like, we should think about this like a war. Like I think Mick said that. I think that's great propaganda. I think that would be phenomenal propaganda to sell it to conservatives. But I'm worried about that enforcing that, basically. That's one of my concerns. How do you enforce that?
I'm a little confused. What do you think is reasonable about telling people that they can't gather? They can't have gatherings for Thanksgiving or Christmas because there's risk that they might infect their family members and then, by extension, other people in their community with COVID. Like, what's unreasonable about that?
No, I think you can tell them that, but is then when they do it in spite of that, is the solution throwing them in cuffs and then putting them in a cage?
I think so. Well, I think if they do it the first couple times, I'd fine them, right? Give them a slap on the wrist, $200. But if they do it more than a couple of times, then yeah, I'd be totally fine if people violate other laws, right? Other things we come together in a social contract and we vote on and we say, hey, this is a rule now. People violate those laws. Eventually, they end up in a cage. I don't see why this should be any different.
But these aren't laws, though. These are arbitrarily decided by governors.
So what?
They're not arbitrary. This is not arbitrary. This is a direct response to a real world phenomenon. I'm sorry.
Okay. Arbitrary was the wrong term. But this is not something that we communally came up with democratically approved guidance for how we're going to manage the pandemic. And like, dude, so on one level, I hate democracy.
Are democratically elected. What do you mean?
The governors are?
Or your governors are democratically elected too, I assume.
I wish Pisco was here because he could probably articulate the roles of a governor.
Counterpoints, I think I get what you're saying, right? Like, it's not going through the normal process to become a law, and like that. I get what you're saying. I think that though this is one of those situations where, like, if we had a foreign army invade the United States and kill 250,000 people, right? Would you be saying the governors should not be taking immediate action? We need to wait for the legal process to go through, or would we be taking immediate, swift action? Because that's basically where we are now, right? Like,
it's an interesting parallel because like and bear in mind, some of this is devil's advocacy, okay? Because me personally, I'm staying home. I'm going to a social gathering less than 10 people. I will not be sending my child to daycare because I am worried that even though he's a perfectly healthy person, I don't want him to be the 1 in a million fluke that has secondary health consequences for the rest of his life because I was too aggressive about sending him back into the world. So like I am with you guys. The conversation that we're having here that I think we're trying to suss out is who gets to tell us when and where we can't be and how strongly should those rules be enforced. So I actually think like I don't know about CTV, but like a governor coming out and saying like you should only have 10 people, the medical consensus is that you should wear masks, you shouldn't be indoors as much as possible. Like this is the recommendation. But what are the rules? Who gets to make them, and how strictly are they enforced? And I think that's the question that we're trying to answer right now.
Well,
Yeah,
I
and the
kind of
problem
feel
with
like
that is that the problem with that is that it's always fucking partisan, and there's all these pressures, so you end up with having laws enforced that just don't make any bloody sense at all. As the lockdowns here in the United Kingdom have proven, with like, you know, we're going to lock down like most businesses and stuff, but university campuses are still fucking open for some goddamn reason. So yeah, and each of these individual areas is going to have their own individual fights as to what stays open, what stays closed, like what you're supposed to be doing, what the rules are, etc. And that's why when I said earlier that like a top-down thing isn't going to work, it's not necessarily because I'm scared of some authoritarian like government overreach, although obviously I'm an anarchist, so I'm not a massive fan of that, but it's because it's just not going to be fucking effective anyway. Like we have to I mean, specifically, conservatives need to start taking this fucking seriously. Stop listening to Donald Trump and pretending it's a fucking hoax. Stop saying shit like, oh, well, there's a 99% survival rate because, you know, 1% of how many people in your fucking nation? Was it 330 million?
It's
like,
only 32 million people, Max. It'll be all right. Well, you know, unironically, that's what people were saying that like 5 years ago, like we need a new plague, we need a new disease, like all that kind of shit, and now they fucking have one. And like I'm not trying to like make a point like you reap what you sow, but I'm just saying like
no, but I remember people being highly unironic about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I want
ask,
less traffic on the highway. Well, you're about to get it.
Can I ask, because I feel like Counterpoints is the mini boss, right? And CTV is kind of the actual boss and just kind of sitting quietly in the background.
True. I'm like blocking.
People are video games.
So CTV, what do you think is unreasonable about this?
Well, I mean, I've listened to everybody now, right? So for me, I think that you guys are not seeing the big picture here, right? Because for me, big picture is that Riverboat said we should declare a war on this thing, and then Counterpoint said that would be some great propaganda. But I think you all are forgetting that every time that the government decides to wage a war on something, it usually disproportionately affects minorities.
Well,
right?
actually, COVID is disproportionately.
Wouldn't that be good?
Really been devastating.
One at a time. DB, finish your point.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to say that because
I actually
COVID
hadn't
does
finished my point with that, but
go for it, CTV.
Go ahead.
I mean, because when it disproportionately affects minorities, it's going to do so in a few different ways. It's not just the virus concern; it's also the number of fines or the amount of jail time to somebody's because they decided they weren't going to do it. And then there's going to be a hyper focus again by the police to be able to do this. So I'm just going to err you to the side of caution and say maybe declaring war on something isn't such a good fucking idea.
Well,
okay, well, like, what is your fucking issue with like conservatives taking responsibility and, you know, restricting the amount that they're gathering, observing social distancing, wearing masks in places where it's appropriate, and so on? Like, why do you think that you guys shouldn't be putting social pressure on your own to be following these guidelines in order to keep everybody safe?
What I'm specifically saying is that putting legislation in place that imposes fines or jail time and it gives the government that power is going to end up disproportionately affecting minorities.
So, okay, why are we not answering Counterpoint's actual set of questions? Why are we not answering Counterpoint's set of questions which are actually solution oriented, wherein we decide who actually has the jurisdiction over how many people can be in a room a banquet hall, a gym at the same time? Why are we not deciding who has jurisdiction over that in this discussion so that we can go forward and say, are these laws on the books, or are they emergency medical measurements that we took on a case-by-case basis throughout our communities with the jurisdiction of these people who I just described? I assume that would be like fire marshals combined with medical professionals who work for governments throughout the states.
Yeah, and
Right.
I want to expand on that a little bit. So for instance, like the points well taken that Scarlett just made, and that like Riverboat Jack kind of pointed out, was that like these are exigent circumstances. This is not a normal circumstance. Like 9/11 killed 3,000 people, and we launched like a $2 trillion war in response to 9/11. So we have 200,000 American dead, and yet we seem to be sitting on our ass and just trying to restart the economy every month and a half-assed. So these are exigent circumstances. Do we put in exigent responses? And for exigent circumstances, I think you guys would probably say obviously yes. But then that's kind of the question, is like, do you put in sunset provisions? Is this something that goes to the state legislatures? Is this something that's decided by medical professionals in conjunction with the governor? Are these rules enforceable? Do we arrest people? Like, and Doobie's answering the question. Doobie's saying you do arrest people. But then I think there's like a few like secondary consequences that we're not considering that I think need to be acknowledged, which is like, this is one of the largest wealth transfers in American history. The people who are being hit the hardest are working class and basically small businesses, Amazon, large businesses, and basically, I want to say, white collar workers like me largely aren't feeling the sting. But you're basically
crazy amounts of money.
I'm not. I'm not.
No,
I'm paying my bills, but
wait, okay, but this is. It seems like you're. CTV mentioned the race thing earlier. Now you're getting into the wealth transfer. It feels like you're hiding behind, silly like.
No, but the answer.
I don't think these things are silly.
When the reality is, it doesn't matter if minorities are disproportionately affected by fines, right? COVID fines, if they were to happen, or by the jail time associated with that. It doesn't matter that if you put in these restrictions, it might impact poor people more, right? And COVID's impacting poor people more, because those are the people that are dying right now, right? Well, so to say, oh well, the people that are dying might also face the brunt of the impact if we have penalties for doing the things that are killing them. I just why does that? And even if they did, right? Let's say it was 80% of these fines went to like Black people in poor communities. Why does that matter if the reality is that these people are doing stupid things that are leading to the spread of the virus that's killing thousands of people?
Well, I think
counterpoint.
It would definitely disproportionately affect them, right? Like,
So-
that's what he's saying. He's
but-
saying that white folks would get away with it more than Black folks, for example. And he's
And what happens when you throw them into a jail that's overcrowded, and then there's people who are doing high risk things, and then the jail ends up being a super spreader.
Well, again, so this is why at the beginning I said that this should be a war. Like, we need to mobilize as if this is a war. Because when I say that, I don't mean like we pay the National Guard or U.S. soldiers to deploy on U.S. soil to like shoot the virus with like tiny needle guns or whatever. That's not what I mean. But I mean we need to use the powers that the United States government has, which we do have. We have the War Powers Act. And we need to use that to mobilize as a country in order to better defend against this. We did this during World War II. I don't see why it should be any different now when we have a death toll that's like 2 times what it was in World War I. Like this is when we're talking about like extreme circumstances, this is about as extreme as it can get without being like apocalyptic. But my point. What?
But it's fine.
Okay. Well, so the issue is that when I say we mobilize as if this is a wartime problem, we need to mobilize the resources as if it's a wartime problem. Whether it's paying people to stay home, which we have proof of across the world working, that's something that can help lower income people be able to stay at home and not have to make the decisions to go out. Because as counterpoints, you noted, I think in your original opening statement, like a lot of these people are making the best choices they can in order to survive. So what if we change the economic circumstances in which they're making their decisions? Because most of those people probably don't want to be going out. And the reason they're going out is largely because of the economic circumstances that we force them into. And so
I feel like that kind of shifts us away from what the actual topic of the conversation was, which was holidays. Right. So people, I don't think people, unless they're like feeling suicidal or something, I don't think people are saying, "Oh, I just need to go visit my grandmother to survive this Christmas." Right. It's not that. It's people wanting to keep up traditions, get together with their family, and eat some turkey.
All right,
Right,
but
and
that
what if
brings
it's
us back
around
to the
Christmas?
actual question, which we
Wait,
spun off from
hold on.
quite a
That's,
bit.
that's
Are
kinda
you sure?
dismissive,
Because
though.
when you have an elderly person in your family and they're like cognizant of the fact that they don't have that many holidays left, how are you just leaving that out of the equation?
Them to use a Zoom cam. Teach them to use a webcam and get on Zoom. Simple.
I mean,
that's
okay,
fair.
so just as an example though, like so for instance, my great grandma-in-law just passed within the past couple of months or whatever, and we took a calculated risk where we violated some protocol. We visited some elderly people who were health compromised, but we did so because she was passing, and we wanted to emotionally support our family there. And we did so, and luckily we weren't infected and we didn't infect anybody else. But at the same time, we broke some of the protocols that we're talking about right now in order to emotionally support some of our family members during like one of the worst moments of their life. So I know what you're saying, where there's like a practical excuse where if we were infected and then we killed the grandparents, I mean, Jesus Christ, talk about like a rough year. But also there's like an emotional component here that I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it's involved in the calculus at all.
It's not good enough, right? I don't
So
think.
so hypothetically, in your world, we should have gone to jail for violating protocol because we went to go visit somebody who was dying.
What I think you should have done is gone on a Zoom call with your sad family members and say, "Oh, Grammy died. So sad." That's totally fine, right? I don't think going out and risking your life. I don't really care about your life, right? If you want to risk your family's lives, you want to kill all your old relatives. I don't give a fuck, right? But the reality is, you go home. Right? They go home, they go to the supermarket, they talk to the neighbor, and all these people are now at higher risk of getting COVID because you made that decision to put your emotional well-being over the lives of your community, and that's just not good enough. It's just not good enough.
This is this is absolutely the opposite of supporting one another in a time of a national crisis and trying to understand. Like, your take just now was the exact opposite of trying to reach people and trying to explain to them how we can all work together to actually get through this crisis in a way where we don't have so many more peaks and waves of really intense infections, because we can work together. I need you to know that.
No, we can't. I can't work with counterpoints if he's willing to risk the lives of his community to meet up with some sad family members, right? That's just reality. So if that's what he wants to do, right? I like. It just seems like telling him, "Oh, we can work together. We need to come together."
You seem very
we talked last
authoritarian.
time.
Please,
Were you
please,
not a MAGA?
Please. Just saying, we need to come together as a nation. We can work together. We can hug it out. This just seems like you're enabling these people. You're infantilizing them. These are adults that are making stupid fucking decisions that are killing people. That's the reality.
Can I
very
ask?
authoritarian.
Yeah,
Absolutely authoritarian.
But
Okay.
well, and that was
But
gonna be my
that's not an
question.
argument. Maybe authoritarian is what's necessary. We're in the middle of a fucking pandemic.
And that's
that. Like, there
I
will
don't
be.
disagree.
that was the very nature. That was the very nature of the actual legal questions that we had about this, as far as who can be punished, why they can be punished, and by what actual authority they can be punished.
Yeah, and this is the other thing that like I really don't like because this I'm gonna jump on CTV side real quick. We have like what's called like mission creep in the military. It's where like something bad happens, something goes sideways, you bring in more forces in order to address the bad thing. Something happens to those forces, so you bring in more stuff, and then what happens is you basically balloon your resources. And that's what's happened with law over the past 300 years. And I'm not saying that's terrible. Like, we do need new laws in order to address new problems. But basically now you have like the NSA with the spy apparatus. You have the war on terror with like a super bloated military. You have an American empire that's massive. And then you basically have like a domestic policing state that's militarized to the point that you can't even see straight, or at least some progressives can't see straight. So my point is that like, things tend to creep in one direction of more authoritarian, and then it's typically very hard to get it back libertarian once the crisis has passed.
So I think that's fucking ridiculous. Like comparing this
Patriot Act
crisis-
is a clear example of that.
Okay, no, it's not. Comparing this crisis to the military-industrial
How
complex.
not?
Well, I can explain. Comparing this crisis
Let him talk.
to the military-industrial complex, when this is relating to a virus that we have a vaccine coming for down the line in the next hopefully few months, right? It's just not comparable. This vaccine gets put out, people start taking the vaccine. Hopefully that's mandatory too. And then we don't need to worry about this shit anymore. The restrictions are lifted, and we're good, right? But making these stupid fucking decisions, like getting together to see your sick grandmother on fucking Thanksgiving, is just gonna prolong the suffering, make it harder for us to get out of this cycle, and kill more people. It's irresponsible, selfish, and fucking disgusting that people enable it.
Vapid bloviating. It did not at all address how it was any fucking different from like the Patriot Act in the wake of 9/11. Like,
well, no,
the idea of authoritarian creep, you did not address that at all. You were just like, oh, it's different. Like, this is really spooky. Like, how much?
You basically just said authoritarian's okay as long as.
Let me repeat it. Let me tell you why it's not. Let me tell you why it's not the same thing. Okay, again, this is relating to a virus that we have a vaccine for. That's, I think, it's like 98% effective. So this virus, hopefully in the next year, is going to be wiped out. That's not the case with the necessity to have a military, the necessity to have fucking oil, the necessity to have like a police or to put criminals in jail, to fight terrorists. Terrorists aren't going to go. We don't have a vaccine for terrorism. Right? Those are long-term issues that we don't have. They're going to be around for the foreseeable future.
You're not fucking. Again, you're bloviating. Like, there's. We could have another virus like that, right? We still need those powers. We're going to keep them, actually, because we need them for the next time a big virus comes along. Big virus comes along every couple of years, really. So,
authoritarian.
The authoritarian.
Once you give in, they don't know when to stop.
So can I ask a question then? Well, of course I can. What if this was a bioterrorism attack? All right, so like another state was actively spreading this virus, right? And people were not like, and we obviously need some precautions. We need people to follow rules so that we can keep this attack under wraps, right? And like, hey, maybe you just can't leave your town, right? Because your town has been infected. This is extremely dangerous. Would we not want the government to act with swiftly, right, and not like maybe follow all the democratic processes that we usually?
No, you bring up a great point. I'm glad that we had the example of COVID to really point out some of the communication lines that we didn't have established before between the federal government and the states. In an instance like that of, say, bioterrorism, what I would expect and hope is that the federal government would be using all of its resources to be able to block anything from coming into the country. And from this example that we have now, that these states would actually be better to respond as far as domestically inside the country, right? So those two entities working together would be very, very great in a bioterrorism type situation. But as far as the holidays are concerned, we're already 9 months into this thing. Trying to go backwards with this thing is, I think, only going to hinder us. I think we need to go ahead and accept that it's going to be where it is going to be. And the best thing that we can do is still take the same precautions that we have been for the last 9 months and be able to get this economy back up and rolling so that maybe our Christmas in 2021 will look a little bit brighter.
It's going to look like there's a lot more. Wait, I'm sorry. No, our Christmas in 2021, if we take his advice, our Christmas in 2021 is going to have a lot more bodies. Like, this idea that you just embrace the virus and it's like, oh, well, it's just this quirky little bug that we're just going to have to live with. Christmas is going to be great next year, though, because the economy back on its feet. It's just so, it's almost infantilizing and silly. No, I'm sorry, CTV. I love you, dude. I love you. You're my bro. But do you not, like, comprehend that 250,000 people are fucking dead? Like, obviously,
I comprehend like every year about 150,000 people die from the flu. Every year about 655,000.
Yeah, what's another 250,000 on top of it?
Listen, 655,000 people die from heart-related illness, right? So this is something that happens every single year, right? We have this new thing on the scene, and yes, we need to be paying attention to it, and we do need to be taking the precautions. Like, if we can not go out multiple times during the week for the supplies that we need, and we only go out once, that's something that we should do,
Correct.
right? But as far as using legislation to be able to control
There's a
people,
lot of cross
it's going
chatter.
to end up
Fucking
disproportionately affecting minorities, and when that happens, it's never good, right? Because I mean, Vixen already pointed out that,
TV,
or
I have a
Vivian
question
rather.
for you.
I don't care about minorities. Why do you keep bringing them up?
Wait, let me respond. Come on, that was my question.
Everyone, stop. LSP, respond.
Thank you. What precautions are you talking about? What precautions are acceptable to you? Because the way you worded it earlier sounded like, to hell with the precautions, we got to get the economy rolling. So what precautions are acceptable to you?
The same ones that are being used today. Wash your hands, wear a mask. I mean,
And shutdowns?
the way that you and what?
And shutdowns?
And shutdowns, why would we need to continue shutting down? I mean, everybody, there's like this whole division between essential and non-essential is rather kind of silly, because the essential workers are still, if we only did that, would still be spreading things inside their communities, because they would still have family members and friends that they are going to check on to make sure that they're okay, right? So everybody's still coming into contact with other people, and they're still doing so by socially distancing and washing their hands.
I'm totally with you that people are going to be visiting their family and friends. Can I respond, please? I'm totally with you that people are going to be like visiting their family and friends. The entire point of shutdowns is to restrict their contact as much as possible before they visit their family and friends, right? What you can't do if you've got an economy that's rolling full steam ahead.
So then we just need to go ahead and get the economy full steam rolling ahead.
Okay,
What?
can I just
Okay, Vivian, all yours, Vivian.
Okay, so Vivian, and then we're
Well,
going to
no, Vivian made the point, and that's what I was going to second.
We'll let Vivian respond.
Let Vivian
and
talk.
Jack has been very patient, and then after that we'll go to Johnny. Go ahead.
Okay, I think it's really fucking irresponsible to just let that like go past that. Like, oh, we had what was it, 150,000 deaths from flu or something you said? No, it was 22,000 last year. We're already at 10 times that many from COVID. Like, the idea that these things are fucking remotely comparable is just horseshit. I'm sorry.
Okay, good to know. Next, Jack, then Johnny, then Danbo.
Yeah, I mean, like, it'd be one thing if this was something like on par with like heart attacks, right? Except if we made this directly comparable, you know, we'd have people getting heart attacks at an exponentially increasing rate over the course of the year, and that's not what's happening. This is a very different situation where if we don't do anything and the mortality rate stays relatively constant, we're looking at, 6 or 7 million people dying in the country. So, like, I guess, like, my question is, are you, like, okay with a mass dying event on the scale of, like, World War II genocides happening, just so the economy can keep running? If so, like, I'm not sure how we can continue the conversation, right? Because it's completely different values. But if you're interested in bringing those deaths down, then we have to take certain precautions and certain steps. And I don't think this needs to be like some authoritarian dictatorship where, like, the COVID police come by and force you into your home and, like, nail the door shut or whatever. But, like, again, we can do this without COVID police. We can do it just by giving people money, pay them to stay home. And that's what I mean by mobilizing these resources. We don't need to have a Patriot Act like piece of legislation go through to, like, authorize special powers that will never be revoked ever. Like, all we need is someone to budget the budget. like again, like, maybe a more authoritarian approach could have worked at the very beginning when, like, it was still possible to contain this. Now we're far beyond that point, right? Where we're at right now, just so we're all on an even playing field here, we're not at a point where we can, like, isolate ourselves to make this go away. We're at the point where hospitals are literally, like, not having space in them anymore, and people are having to get treated on the ground, or they're having to be shipped off to temporary field hospitals that are being built around the country. Like, this is not a problem that is remotely comparable, right? And, like, just to second Vivian, like, yeah, like, the flu killed 22,000 people. Like, even on one of its worst years on record, like, it's been like 125,000 at worst. So, like, I just need to point all of this out, that like having this framed as like some question between tyranny and like absolute freedom, I think that's a false choice, and painting it as such is something that's not going to do anyone any favors. You know, maybe we could have something like on the terms of like house arrest, but even then I'm against something like that at this point, because it's not going to do anywhere near enough good. What will do good, and what we have documented evidence that will do good, is by paying people to stay home. And like CTV was talking about, that disproportionately helps minority groups. It helps them if we pay them to stay home. So like, and like the whole reason we have a dichotomy between necessary workers and unnecessary workers is to reduce the amount of physical interactions people are having. And by doing that, we slow the spread of the virus so that we don't have hospitals that are overflowing with people, because when that happens, people start dying at a much higher rate because they aren't getting into the hospital to get treated for their other ailments. So like where we're at right now is forming like some sort of we've broken our leg in the middle of the wilderness, and we need to make a tourniquet out of our shirt. Like that's where we're at. And so we need to throw money at this problem until it's fixed.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
That's another important thing to note as well. Just to highlight that, I think Business Insider, maybe it was, did a report on excess deaths, right? So like how many more deaths there have been between in the last 6 months compared to like last year, right? And that far outstrips the COVID death rate. But is likely in part attributable to the fact that like hospitals are overwhelmed, people are less likely to visit their GPs or their doctors or whatever for fear of the pandemic and so on. So like it's not just those deaths that are directly from COVID.
Mix, I don't want to cut anybody off, but I wanted to ask that question. Do you remember the approximate proportions by any chance? Was it like 50-50? Was it like another 200,000 deaths? Was it like 30% higher?
This was in the United Kingdom, and I think it was and I can't remember exact numbers. All I remember is being surprised at how many there were. So
interesting.
Can I ask
the article again?
Can I ask Jack a
sorry for
question,
jumping in.
please?
Yeah.
Great. Jack, you keep saying pay people to be home, to stay home. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like a stimulus? Do you mean like monthly paychecks? And if so, like what evidence do you have to say that paying people leads to them staying home more often?
Well, so this is something that we've seen in the economic data that we have going back for as long as there have been pandemics and economic data. The economy doesn't return to normal until the pandemic is done. And so like even if we had no stimulus, even if we're just gonna go economy full throttle, it's not gonna get better until the virus is gone anyway. So the whole point of paying people to stay home is that most people don't willingly want to subject themselves to a situation in which they're going to die. That includes like consumers. Most people who go out and buy things physically don't want to put themselves in a position where they're going to die. Most people who work also don't want to put themselves in that position. And this is why there's that distinction again between necessary and unnecessary. And so when you look around the world, in a lot of the places where there are the fewest numbers of COVID deaths, people got paid to stay home. People got paid to stay home, and that slowed the spread of the virus significantly. It's when they opened back up that their virus rates spiked up again. And so, like, again, like it's not a big mystery. The United States isn't like special in this regard. Like, we're not, American exceptionalism does not extend to us being somehow magically more vulnerable to viruses. No, it's just that we weren't willing to take the economic steps necessary to slow this spread. And that's painfully obvious in the way that, like, everyone got a $1,200 check, and then, like, we boosted unemployment temporarily, and it's been like months since that ended. And also there was a loophole in the unemployment bill which allowed businesses to basically say, come into work or you are legally considered to have quit, in which case you are not eligible for unemployment. So like all of the safety nets that we had were extremely shitty. And so like it's like even if you look at Canada had $2,000 a month for some people, and like we could do that here. We could do it. It's just a matter of we don't prioritize it at all. So
but
I'm glad you pointed out all that.
Johnny Scarlett, and then Danable.
Okay. I actually wanted to expound upon that really quick and say that in Louisiana in particular, our governor actually found a loophole wherein the second bonus basically for the unemployment required that the state pay at least a certain percentage of it. And so it ended up being an exploited loophole wherein they just excluded everyone underneath a certain amount of unemployment benefit from any benefit at all. And so there were people making $25 a month, $25 a week, unemployment, who weren't getting any bonuses. And then people who were making $100+ a week unemployment and then getting hundreds of dollars of bonuses. And it just was an exploited loophole specifically so that Louisiana didn't have to pay unemployment to everyone. So that's just one way that this can be abused. But I want to say that fiscal consequences for businesses doesn't have to expand beyond stuff that we already have established the government has power for. We already have fire marshals who can say how many people can be in a building. We already say that most utilities are public utilities and the government can come and shut things off. So if a business is not complying with mass standards, with fire marshal standards of how many people should be in, etc., they can have their utility shut off. And as far as there being fire marshal stuff with how many people can be in a building, obviously there would be limits on who can be punished based on their immediate family groups. If you live in a house with 10+ people and you have 9 bedrooms or whatever, then I guess you would probably be exempt. But as far as outside of family groupings, if you're paying people to stay at home, to echo Riverboat Jack, if you're actually giving the economic stimulus that people need so that they can stay home, and then you're expounding upon these 2 factors that we've already established we have control over, then you don't have to arrest people or fine people. You can just start deciding that businesses no longer have access to public things, public utilities.
Danable.
I haven't talked for a while, and I didn't take any notes, so this may be a bit of a ramble. There are a few things I wanted to address. Where Prime was talking about what if this was bioterrorism, what would we do then? Vivian asked why conservatives or Republicans don't take personal responsibility. And I think Counterpoints asked who has the authority to get these done. I think all of these things are linked, and we should accept the reality of where US politics is now. When the Patriot Act was put through, US politics was in a state where you could unite the country around a thing, and the propaganda and the war on terror worked, and they blindly accepted the Patriot Act coming from their Republican president. And you could do that now with Trump. The Republicans will blindly accept a mandate coming from Trump saying stay indoors and wear your mask. They would accept that. But where we are now is 9 months of Trump telling people there's no coronavirus and go to work and everything's fine. And we've got millions and millions of people just not believing in the coronavirus. Not only that, they don't believe in viruses anymore. Viruses aren't a thing. If you speak to the average everyday conservative Republican, they just do not believe in viruses. That's where we're at the state of playing politics now. It's so far gone that you've got a president who's just lost re-election telling people he's won the election, and they just believe him. So yeah, you've got to accept the reality of where we are now. If a mandate came from Trump saying stay indoors, shut down companies, they'd accept it. But the problem is it's coming from Democrats, and they'll never accept that. It doesn't matter what you're proposing; they're not going to accept it. Okay. There we go. That's my ramble.
Counterpoints.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a little bit of a misnomer, like a miscalculation. Like I know what you're saying. Like I'm not a MAGA person. I don't like MAGA people. I don't like the Trump cult or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure if Trump told CTV that he couldn't leave his house, CTV's answer would be the same, which is you can go fuck yourself. Because there are plenty of like real libertarians, anarcho-capitalists. There are real people who don't like government oversight in general. It's kind of like in the American DNA. That's part of the reason why we probably won't comply with any Biden passed gun control.
But he could have told them the virus was real, and then CTV would be more likely to stay indoors in the first place.
Maybe, but at the same time, if Trump said you're not allowed to leave, the answer is going to be you can go fuck yourself. Like that's kind of like
the majority would follow the rule of law, and they just like they blindly accepted the Patriot Act. So they might say go fuck yourself, but they still accepted the Patriot Act.
You're right that probably the Trump cult, which is probably like our primary, super spreaders or whatever, they probably would be a non-factor. So I'll just concede that point. But just to go to Riverboat Jack, which I think brings up an interesting point, because I feel like we're in like a crossing point in history where we have to decide what does money mean. So I was kind of told as a kid that the reason why the Weimar Republic failed is because the economy was in shambles, and instead of actually like producing things and maintaining the value of their currency, they just decided to print money and not like actually improve the economy at all. And as a result, there were people walking around with wheelbarrows full of cash in order to buy, a loaf of bread or some shit like that. That's what I was told coming up. What I'm being told by modern monetary theorists or whatever is that financial theory is more like a body with blood flow, where if you have somebody who's bleeding out, you don't care if you give them more blood. So like a blood transfusion. So in this case, where the economy is basically shriveled, we're in shock. Then maybe giving a blood transfusion, like a large infusion of cash, in this metaphor, kind of like blood. Maybe that wouldn't be the dumbest thing in the world, and you just couldn't keep printing forever. So like I'm interested. I'm curious. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not a modern monetary theorist, but that would also have to apply to UBI if UBI ever becomes a thing. And then that's what I'm wondering is if in the next 50 years, if my perspective on economics and money is just going to be like that's what dumbass fogies think. And I have no idea. I have no idea what the future holds.
Well, it's really interesting because it's a good comparison, right? Because there have been a lot of countries under capitalism who have tried printing their own money, and it has led to a lot of different economic disasters in the past. However, there's a big difference between where the Weimar Republic was, settled
way off base.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Come on, Prime. Let me talk about history, please.
Very quick.
We're talking about how to combat coronavirus with financial theory. I don't know. I feel like it's pretty on the nose.
I'll get us back. I promise.
Well, how about this? We're going to start final thoughts on this. So this will be your final thought.
Okay.
But everyone keep them brief so we can keep this show going. So
yeah. So basically, the Weimar Republic was in a very different place. They were saddled with the Treaty of Versailles, so they had to basically handle the entirety of the expenses of World War I, which basically sunk their economy like a rock. And so to try and get out of that, they tried printing money. Didn't work. It was a horrible disaster. Whereas in the United States, we're in a very different position. Like the world is heavily invested in our debt, so the world is heavily invested in the dollar. Oil is traded on the dollar. Most of the economy of the world has based itself on the US dollar. So this, to a large degree, is why we were able to print $9 trillion in money for COVID relief, and it didn't affect inflation in this country. So I think we're at the point now where it's like we're in unexplored economic territory. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, but this is, I think, a good point of jumping off for us towards more economically savvy positions, like Medicare for all, for example, technically saves us money, or decommodifying homes, for example, that also saves us money. Things like this save us money and improve our economy. So there are these things that we can do right now on top of some sort of UBI system that would directly improve our economy, because frankly, again, I need to reiterate this, our economy is not going to recover until the pandemic is over, and increasing the amount of dead people in our economy is only going to harm us in the long term. We can't replace people, we can replace money. So this is basically my position. We should probably prioritize people over money.
Okay. Next, a mixed Vivian Wolf.
I don't know. I'm still like kind of just generally despairing at CTV's response to the or I guess lack of a response to the question of like why he won't like hold his fellow conservatives responsible for trying to stop the spread of the virus for like just taking basic fucking precautions, really easy shit like wearing a mask when you're out in public, not getting too close to each other, like really easy shit. And his response seems to be largely just fucking denialism and spreading falsities about like how fucked up the virus is currently. So I yeah, if people literally don't believe that the virus is a threat, I don't even know where we go from there. We've reached a point of unreality within the conservative base that is disturbing to me. But I've been talking about that for a while with cults and shit anyway. So I'm not super surprised. It's just alarming.
Okay. CTV, you can counterattack.
I think that there's been a lot of fear mongering around a lot of this stuff, more so than what is actually necessary to get people to take some basic precautions. I think that giving the government any kind of power and this kind of response at the federal level is inherently not only against what would be for the betterment of the public health. Oh, this is my closing statement. You shut your fucking mouth.
You won't fucking answer.
You got that? Shut the fuck up right now. I'm talking. I didn't interrupt you.
Guys, come on.
Please. Go ahead.
I know, Mifa. I know.
No, so I'm gonna have to mute you. Because we can't do that. Go ahead.
All right. So because we're already like 9 months into this thing, everything the virus is going to continue traveling how it is going to travel. There's no point in trying to relock everything down whenever it has the incubation time that it has, and trying to discourage people that have spent the last 9 months potentially isolated from their families, to tell them that this holiday season they're not going to be able to spend time with their family because Big Daddy Government wants to tell you how to live your life. That right there goes against one of my core tenets of freedom, and just like Counterpoint said, you can fuck right on off of that.
Not Big Daddy Government. Your fellow conservatives. Hold some social responsibility, some social... Why do you keep dodging this and going, oh, government authoritarianism? Like, nobody's fucking saying that, you absolute
closing.
Shit.
All right, sorry, moving on. Thank you.
That's free space right there.
LSP.
I really love the passion we have in here. Hi, Johnny. I haven't spoken to you in a while. I always enjoy speaking to you the few times I ever get to do it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I went on a rant on Prime's podcast. I'm sorry, panel, whatever this is. Like a few ones back with and a similar argument with the ANCAPS guy. I forgot his name. Last username. Where basically it's just a general rant about like how leftists are really bad at selling the idea that they just want you to be healthy to righties. And I think like there's a resolution for this, right? It has to do with like the lack of scarcity in media. So basically righties can just like, because everything's so hyper partisan, they can basically consume whatever media confirms to whatever biases they want. And so long as leftists are proposing anything, they can find some sort of a media that suggests something like, oh, masks don't work. Here's what the latest science says. Here's Dr. Fauci saying masks don't work in this out of context clip. And that's basically what I think like CTV is a byproduct of. And I say this with love, CTV. I actually do love you, and I actually do care about you because you are my brother. But this is like a fucking dangerous thing, and I really feel like conservatives in general don't take this seriously. They go to Trump rallies like completely maskless, right? It's lunacy. What it is what it is. 2,000 Americans died in 9/11. We're able to unite the country behind an idea, a common unity to like prevail in that moment of sadness. But for some reason, when some 250,000 Americans die, we treat it like it's a partisan football, and it's frankly it's just irresponsible. But I mean that's me. There you go.
Gannibal?
Yeah, I'm doom pilled, and I generally agree with LSP. I think the only way out of this now, Yeah. The only way out of this now is our president-elect Joe Biden. Hopefully, coming in the spring next year, Joe Biden will manage to get rid of some of this partisanship and make Republicans just take this seriously. The only way we're going to deal with it is if the government takes it seriously. And I hope Joe work across the aisle. Biden can be the one to do that. We'll see. It may get even worse. It definitely wouldn't have been Bernie Sanders. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
There you
go. Doobie.
Okay. So, I asked Jack earlier what evidence she had to suggest that paying people will make them stay home. And I got to be honest, I wasn't at all satisfied with what you presented. Because we aren't just talking about people who are like non-essential workers or people that are forced to go to the grocery store and fight over toilet paper. We're talking about people who just don't give a fuck about the virus, who go to block parties, go to rallies, go to the hang out with their boys on the weekend. I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that giving them more money will keep them home, and it won't just give them more cash or blow when they go out on the weekend, when they go visit their families over the holidays, right? I think the poll that I saw recently was that like 20% of the U.S. just is not concerned about COVID at all. These are the people that we're talking about. People like CTV, right? Who might wear a mask just because people are gonna look at them weird if they don't. But as soon as they're out of that store, they're ripping off the mask and they're just going, fucking government, and throwing it away, right? I think the reality that we need to accept, and I know that some of you thought I was being a little authoritarian. I don't care. I am an authoritarian. The reality is that some people are just stupid. Not on every topic. I'm sure that there are tons of issues. If I spoke to CTV about it, he'd totally blow me out of the water. He knows much more than me, right? But the sad truth is some people are just fucking stupid. They need to be told how to live their lives. They need to be told where the lines are. And if they cross those lines, you need to punish them like you would a child, right? And keep and force them back into place. That's just the truth. Okay, but that aside, really quickly, Dannabo, you went on this rant about how just Republicans don't believe in viruses and they're all stupid and they're a cult. I wish people like you didn't exist.
Yeah, I would never say they're stupid.
You did say that. You said they don't believe.
No.
You said Republicans don't believe in viruses. That's fucking
that's
ridiculous.
Stupid. They've just been told
No, that's fucking that's a ridiculous thing to say. The fact that you believe that's true hurts me inside. It's gonna make it keep me up later.
So I don't have to. I can just ask.
I just don't. Oh my god.
You can respond to him if you're in your next opening statement. If you want to say something back, sure. But go ahead, finish your point, Danpo.
Okay.
Sorry, not Danpo. Sorry.
That's about it. I think the rest of this kind of stuff. We need to come together. People want to see their sick grandma for the holidays, and we need to be understanding. That's all fucking infantilizing bullshit, right? These are adults. If we have
people like children.
Yeah. These are please.
Everyone, please. You're gonna get your chance.
These are adults, right? And when adults fuck up, right, there are consequences. Like I said earlier, just like a child, right? You can treat them, you can infantilize them, but you got to give them the consequences you'd give a child to, right? When the child fucks up, you take away its toys. Okay, I'm telling you, we need to take away their toys, right? And if that means their fucking business, if that means their freedom, if that means their ability to drive, their fucking driver's license, that I'm fine with that. Okay, and if CTV doesn't like that, I don't give a fuck. Sometimes the government doesn't need to tell you how to live your life.
I got an answer to that.
Can I respond since
Jesus Christ, it's closing statement.
Absolutely cannot. But DB, yeah, I have no idea why anyone would call you Palpatine. No clue why anyone would make that comparison. But I appreciate what I love about DB is the honesty. He won't fucking hold a thing back from you. So I love it. All right, Johnny.
I spoke with an MD, a recent MD named Doc Midnight, actually. Shout out to Doc Midnight on Twitter. He's known as @roundmidnight_ on Twitch, and he spoke to me extensively about his understanding of vaccines, these particular vaccines coming out of Moderna and Pfizer, as well as the coronavirus in general. And what we found was that there are literally people dying and with their last breath stating that they shouldn't be alone in their in their hospital room because they don't have COVID. That's literally what these people are seeing on the ground. And at some point you cannot fix that, but what you can do is you can listen to guidelines, and you can, yes, live with one another, believe it or not. Live with one another and be understanding when people say, I'm going to follow these guidelines and I'm going to have a very small open family gathering. Those people should not literally go to jail. And on another note, we must amend our constitution to remove ownership of incarcerated persons by the government. And that's going to be my final statement in general. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Counterpoints.
And guys, I'm not trying to like fucking lecture you or anything, but like, you know, we can meme with each other in the next couple of minutes when we get into the next fucking subject. We need to, if ending statements are going to be ending statements, then we need to talk over each other. So I love you dearly. I know that's Prime's job. I'm not trying to take his job. I just fucking, you know, read this fast. So Jack, I would love to talk to you about like modern monetary theory or some of the financial stuff or the historical parallels, because I think that's like really where we need to get into it. It's like, can we escape some of like the sins and consequences of the past in the future? And as somebody who really loves history, that scares the fuck out of me, because I'm really worried that like, you know, like COVID's bad, COVID's killing the shit out of people, but sometimes, and I'm not saying specifically for this, but sometimes the cure can be worse than the disease. I'm not saying that it is right now. I'm just saying that in particular with Doobie, I would find that the cure would be worse than the disease. I don't think we need an authoritarian response from government. I'm not interested in giving up democracy. I'm not interested in giving up my republic just to respond to stupid people or exigent circumstances. I'm not interested in that at all. And one of the frustrations that I keep hearing from people is that we live in a democracy in which we all have opinions, and opinions are like assholes. We all have them and they fucking stink. So, you know, like CTV, I know a lot of people didn't agree with him. Doobie, a lot of people didn't agree with him. I like living in a secular republic in which I can get onto a panel show and debate with 9 strangers, all of whom I think are pretty smart. And I want to maintain that. And I don't want the government to tell me what to do, which I think is, I'm really only addressing Doobie with that statement. I think all of you guys had more nuanced solutions. So with that, I'll shut the fuck up and I'll pass the torch, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next topic. I might have to put you guys on a clock. I don't like doing that, but I might have to put you guys on a clock to get things moving. All right, so next topic is, if I can get it right, topic 2. This is a serious topic. Vice published an article about a pro-choice suicide website. The forum features hundreds of members encouraging each other's decision to take their life, along with methods to do so. 2 mothers of suicide victims who utilize the site are seeking to both increase the penalties for suicide assistance and increase the liability website owners have for the content on their sites. Do you agree with these actions? Should this type of speech be protected? The article says that many of the site's users ended up there because other forums discouraged and shamed suicide discussions. Are we creating a larger issue by stifling these conversations? All right, serious topic, guys. Yeah, let's keep it about 1 minute. I'm going to time you, and I will cut you off because we just got to keep it moving. I want to respect everyone's time. So, Riverboat Jack.
Yeah, I think that this type of speech, while uncomfortable and also very, I can see how this would affect a lot of different people. I think that this should be allowed. I think that having a space to talk about suicide and the desire to commit suicide is something that is valuable. And I say this as somebody who has lost multiple people in my life to suicide. And I think that, again, it's your life. You have a decision whether or not you want to live it, and that's completely up to you. And you should be able to discuss that decision with people.
Okay, Mixed Vivian Wolf.
I think this comes from a society which doesn't really have really great rules around euthanasia in general. I don't agree that this website is a good thing, because it seems to me, from reading the article and so on, that it's there's a lot of folks encouraging each other to go ahead with this sort of stuff, and it's a very personal decision that has to be made with like informed consent, and it's a very final decision, and it's not something that anybody should be pushing people into at all. I think from just looking over the forum and so on, it seems like a very unhealthy space to me. Not quite as bad as like some of the incel forums, but still pretty bad. But the reason a space like this exists is because there aren't serious open discussions around like euthanasia and so on, like happening in society in general. And I think those definitely need to happen. And I think that euthanasia, in fact, should be legal. Although there should be a very strict process people go through before making that decision.
Okay. CTV.
Well, I'm never for government getting involved with this, with anything really. In this particular issue, there's a need for the government to be involved so that if a doctor was to help with somebody, then they would have to be some type of protections there for the person helping. I think that having spaces to be able to talk about this are very important. I didn't get a chance to really read the article, so I'll be honest about that up front. But with the idea of it, having read the title and kind of skimming over it, I feel like having the conversations is very important. I don't think that there should be any type of encouraging happening. So I would be of the camp of saying that this is something that needs to be handled by a medical professional.
Okay. LSP.
I'm just wondering, when Doobie said like treat him like a child, like, you want me to spank CTV?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Stream, please.
Amazing.
Okay. No. I'll demonstrate how fucking old I am. I actually like grew up watching a show called Boston Public, which half of you I'm sure haven't heard of because you're all under the age of like 25, and I'm a fucking dinosaur.
It was a good show.
It was a good show.
Amazing.
So you remember like the subplot with the teacher Harry Sennett and how he formed a suicide club, right?
Knowledge.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so I mean, there was a subplot with his teacher who formed a suicide club because a lot of people thought about like suicide and they needed a place to discuss it that was safe. And it seems, admitting I haven't read this thing to see what this specifically is, but I mean, this seems, conceptually, if it resembles this in any way, it doesn't seem like a bad thing. Conversations like these aren't something you can really stamp out. A lot of people have kind of this romanticized idea about suicide, and the good thing about discussing this with other people is it can go a long way in like dispelling like this idea of what like suicide is or does to people. Or sometimes it could just be like you're really that fucked. I don't know. But I mean, ultimately, like whether you want to live your life is a very personal decision for you to make, and I think you should be fully able to explore that with other people.
Okay. Next is counterpoints.
Yeah, so I think Mix was really right to bring in euthanasia into this conversation, because I think that there really should be a moral difference between like suicide for like emotional trauma. Although I think there probably is such thing as sufficient emotional trauma to commit suicide. But there should be like a delineation between like euthanasia past the point where like life is no longer worth living, and suicide where you're so distraught or isolated or alienated that you just want to kill yourself and you have other people encouraging you to do that. So I think we need to draw a moral difference there. Some of the toughest things that I've ever dealt with in my life were pets, family members, elderly folks who I dealt with, who no longer had any kind of quality of life. And quality of life is that doesn't cover it. We're talking about people who can't walk, who can't move, who can't exist in the world without some semblance of pain. And as somebody with minor but chronic pain issues, I'm really sympathetic to the people who can't, their entire life is suffering. Like they just wake up and they suffer for 16 hours a day and then they go back to sleep. I think the ability to check out, if you're in one of those camps, needs to be a legal option for you as far as euthanasia goes, but it needs to be administered by a doctor. It needs to be administered by a psychologist. It needs to be administered by a therapist. And then when we're talking about these forums, should people be able to do it? Sure. But I also think that if you're a forum manager who's basically administering that page, and you encourage maybe like a teenager who just, they did some cringe shit at high school and they got made fun of, and then you have adult people telling that kid to kill himself and he kills himself, you should be liable to suit. Their parents should be able to sue you for wrongful death, because it's your free speech to do with what you see fit, but you should also bear the consequences of encouraging somebody to take their life.
Okay. Danbo.
Okay. This topic is one of those where I get the moniker of Twitch's #1 conservative, because I am pro-life. I'm anti-abortion. I'm anti-euthanasia. I'm anti the death penalty. I'm anti-war. Any killing, I think, is bad. So that's my moral stance. But pragmatically, of course, just like my stance on abortion, people are going to seek these things out by legal means. So there should be a space for that to happen legally. And that would be the same with euthanasia. There needs to be a space for that to happen legally, or they're going to seek it out on places like these forums that I think absolutely should not exist. What should exist is Medicare for all. We should have a mental health system where people can go and speak to their medical professionals to discuss things like suicide. Yeah, the American sort of fascination with protected speech, I don't get it. You shouldn't be able to incite violence on a forum, whether it's suicide or murder of any kind.
I'll say this. Thank you for being consistent, buddy. Danbo. Most people aren't consistent with their beliefs, but you seem to be very consistent. All right. Next, we'll go to Johnny Scarlett.
Okay. Now, if I
And
would,
LSP, if you could mute yourself. If you can mute yourself, are we getting a lot of typing? But
I would say that encouraging suicide for no interest with regards to the health of persons affected would certainly be a solid semantic argument for giving someone a punishment, a legal punishment for encouraging what we're denoting as encouraging suicide. Now, obviously, the discussion of it, there's really no argument in my mind that the discussion of suicide in general is something that is healthy, something that needs to be acknowledged, and especially in families that are already affected by suicide. Suicide/euthanasia, I think, should be the jurisdiction of medical professionals, and that opens up a whole discussion that I've been thinking about, and I don't have any clear answers for, on medical professionals and medical professions as classified labor that is guaranteed to be funded. Now, I would like to take the rest of my time to say, if you are struggling with anything like suicidal ideation, I highly encourage you to contact the suicide hotline, but also as a further philosophy for your life, please look into the Order of the Good Death, as denoted by Caitlin Doty and Twitch's own Mo the Bone Lady. It is a death-positive community where people can speak on more generally morbid topics with things like joy, peace, and certainty in mind.
And the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is in the chat. So yeah, if you are feeling that way, please take that option to talk to someone before doing anything rash. I want to make it clear that this hotline, this discussion, is certainly not encouraging suicide in any way. We're just want to explore this topic as to people's freedom to discuss these issues.
Prime. Yeah, I know I said I was probably equipped for this, but actually I think I might set this topic out. Can I just deaf mute, turn off my camera or whatever, and you can send me a message when you get on to the next one?
Sure.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Doobie. Yeah, your turn.
I think, I don't think that they should be allowed to have this website. The difference between this website and a lot of other suicide forums that exist out there is mentioned in the Vice article, right? They're much more hands off when it comes to people actually discussing methods to commit suicide and the efficacy of those methods. I don't think that should be allowed. And if there are deaths that can be linked back to these forums, to the discussions that are had on these forums, I think the owner and the moderators of these forums should be held liable. I think there should be criminal penalties.
Okay. Open to discussion.
What criminal penalties for telling people how they can die?
Yeah, for telling vulnerable suicidal people effective ways to kill themselves. Yes.
Can I, before we get into it, and I'm sure we might get a little heated or a little edgy or a little interesting. I just want to share like a personal anecdote really quick, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, especially with men, but I know women experience this shit too, and I'm not trying to gender it, so this goes for anybody really. Basically, you don't have to recognize you don't have to recognize these things in yourself. So I worked in some pretty tough jobs, military and law enforcement, and I was kind of in denial that anything fucked me up. Like I was really in denial for a really long time. That some of the intense things that I did and the intense things that I saw and the intense, like situations that I was in affected me psychologically. And basically a straw finally broke the camel's back. And I was already going to a therapist on the side, because oftentimes it's not kosher to share that you're going to see a therapist. But I called somebody. Like I was like, I need somebody. I need to talk to somebody. And I called the hotline. And that ended up not being good for me, because there's a stigma. Like, are you thinking about killing yourself right now? And it's like, no, but I'm fucked up and I need help. So I'm not at that stage, but I need somebody to talk to about the fucked up shit I've seen. And they actually redirected me to a free local service in the Central Florida area. And what happened was I was able to like unburden the thing that was immediately on the surface. And the thing that was immediately on the surface was just enough that I could get back to normal. And then I could kind of proceed with my life. And then, slowly through a few more therapeutic sessions, I was able to kind of like unburden more. But that's what I would say to anybody listening to this specifically is like, if you're at the edge, if you just have that like one straw that finally broke the camel's back and you're thinking like, should I call somebody? Should I not call somebody? Just fucking call. Okay. Because you might just need to get that little bit of shit off of your soul. And then after that, you can kind of take it piecemeal. So don't, it's like, I'm trying to think of this, but I guess like a really bad metaphor is like, if a bucket's full, you can't put more stuff into it. So if you feel like your bucket's full or nearing full, then go talk to somebody. And then now we can get into the details.
I'm so glad you got what you need.
Yeah.
Johnny?
So I think of the situations for minors most often. As a person who went through abuse at the hands of people as a minor, it was imperative that I find an outlet. And I ended up finding that on the internet. I ended up getting that out to at least a few people that I met in chat rooms, and it ended up being the thing that turned me around. But at the same time, there's so much more information, and so much easier to find now, 15 years later, 10 years later. Like I think about age limits, age restrictions on websites and the internet in general when I think about this. And I know that that's a whole topic unto itself, but legislating and controlling how extremely dangerous content like this falls into the hands of minors, I think should be at the forefront of this conversation. Because at the point that you are a fully developed adult of, I would say, 25 and onward, your brain has more of a capacity to logic yourself into life experiences and say, I made it this far. But as a minor, it's much more, you feel everything more strongly, frankly, before you're fully developed and everything. So that's certainly scary to think about at the very least.
So a lot of people were bringing up euthanasia access, talking about that. But So, in case you didn't get a chance to read the article, one of the mothers who is now suing, or not suing, petitioning to get a law in the books to both limit the access of these websites, like limit their ability to like increase the liability for their content, right? One of the mothers was doing that. Her son was just 17 years old. He wasn't suffering from any sort of disease. He had come out as gay, and he was having a hard time. It wasn't clear to me if he was having a hard time because he was coming out, but he did have a real hard time. His mother did everything. Like if you read what she talked about the struggle she had. He had actually previously attempted suicide by swallowing pills, right? But they saved him. And then after that, she got him two psychologists. She got him on medication. She made sure to spend extra time with him, doing the things he loved, trying to get him out of his mood, right? She kept talking to him I hear you. I mean, you're still kind of mopey and all that, but are you contemplating suicide? He said, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But then months later, he did commit suicide. And on his phone is where she found this website with all these people encouraging others, go ahead, give it a try. So this doesn't seem at all like some sort of support group, like life supporting group. It's one that's saying, okay, yeah, it's not worth it anymore.
It's comorbidity, like a pro anorexia group or a pro bulimia group. What it reminds me of.
Yeah, it's basically people saying if you want to do this, it's your choice. And again, in this group, they spoke about ways to do it, right? In that context.
Well, so that changed things then.
Well, one of my questions is usually I would say that usually people don't find a website like this just right off the bat, right? And it seems like it's the kind of place a lot of people filter into because they've tried to have these conversations elsewhere, and tried to unburden themselves in those places, and were rebuffed. And so they keep looking for a place where they can share like this, and they wind up here. And I agree, by the way. The entire description of this place sounds toxic as hell. And I agree also that mental health professionals should definitely be heavily involved in euthanasia and stuff like that. But also part of the reality that we live in is that there are going to be people who need to talk about this stuff. And they're going to, especially if they're younger, they're going to seek out these places. And I guess my position is
a line that you draw between the encouragement of a comorbidity and a habit that will kill, or just the straight up suicidal ideation, and then these forum type topic discussions.
Yeah.
Can I?
Right. I don't think. Go ahead. Kind of fun.
Yeah, I just want to muddy the waters even further. What's cathartic for some people is going to be toxic for other people, and what's toxic for some people is going to be cathartic for other people. So it's kind of like a, what do they call it, psychiatry or whatever, where you're trying to get the right prescription for people in order to help them out. I remember when I was coming up, one of the main stories about suicide when I was coming up was Adam's song by Blink-182, which is actually a song specifically about suicide, but then it kind of ends on a hopeful note and all that kind of shit. And there was a few teens that basically had copycat suicides listening to the song. And it's kind of weird where exploring deep and dark topics can be very helpful to some people. And then for some people it can be it can be the thing that drags them further down. And if I'm trying to synthesize what, Johnny Scarlett and Riverboat Jack are saying, it's some kind of cathartic spaces need to exist in order for people to honestly explore their emotions. But then how do you police that? How do you organize that? How do you make sure that we're trying to push people in the positive direction? How do we make sure that we're trying to give life a real shot for people who feel like they have no hope or no opportunities? And I don't think there's an easy answer.
I don't think anyone
here
said that.
Well, I'm memeing. I'm just memeing.
Okay, I don't think anybody here has said that. I wouldn't say that people shouldn't have a space, some kind of forum, where they're able to go on and talk about, feeling suicidal and get support, not in committing suicide, but maybe support and finding resources that can help them out of those feelings, right? Whether it's therapy, some kind of hotline, something, right? Maybe encouragement to talk to their friends and their family about what they're feeling. But when you cross the line to having a forum where the moderators and the owner are allowing, they call it a pro-choice forum, right? They're allowing people not just to talk about their suicide, but they're allowing people to encourage other people when they're saying, I might commit suicide this weekend, and they're like, oh, well, that's your choice. Here are some effective ways to do it. Giving them tips for ways to do it that are going to be less traumatic for the family, whoever finds them. They don't have a lot of cleanup. Like when you get to that point, I think I don't think those spaces should exist, and I think there should be some criminal liability for the people who run those spaces.
Do you support? So I'm just curious. You don't support the right of people to end their life regardless of the site? Like you don't think like that? I feel like we're missing the fundamental question. Do people have a right to end their own lives? That's the fundamental question we should be answering here.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. So there are circumstances where they do have that right. You just don't think it's unlimited.
Yeah, I think if there was a medical professional, multiple medical professionals involved, and they went to therapy, and maybe because I remember there's this case, and I think of Sweden, a woman who was sexually assaulted, who wanted to end her life because she just couldn't live with it. She'd gone to therapy for years, she tried to get over it, and she just couldn't get past it, right? And she made the decision with these medical professionals to end her life, right? With the help of medical professionals. I think if that's the case, who am I to say that you need to suffer, right? I don't think that's okay. But
what do you think a medical professional would say differently than what the site would say?
I don't think a medical professional would say, hey, it's your choice to commit suicide if you want to, and here's some effective ways to do it. They would probably say,
then what do you think
you
they
should
would say?
You should speak to your friends and family members. Hey, here's this hotline you can call that'll get you in touch with a professional if you're feeling like you need to talk to somebody, and all these things,
and
right?
it goes further than that. There's all sorts of therapies. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. There's teachings of peace and of being at peace with oneself that you go through when you have something like PTSD, something where you suffer with suicidal ideation. There are actual therapies that can be administered within a conversational one-on-one or group tone. Like this is not just a matter of either pills don't work and you want to go commit suicide or whatever. Like this is a whole process within the medical field.
Yeah, can I kind of want to articulate this because I think it speaks to the fact that we don't have good healthcare in the United States, or in the demand is always going to be more than the the demand is always going to be greater than the supply. But for instance, with like combat veterans, they actually have post-traumatic stress counseling sessions with low doses of ecstasy. There's post-traumatic, and then there's also like an exploration, I believe, with mushrooms as well, like psilocybin. So and a lot of these have like really positive effects. So part of the problem, hitting on CTV's favorite subject, is the war on drugs, where we've classified a whole bunch of pharmaceuticals as category 1. Where we're not allowed to explore their pharmacological applications, whereas if they were category 2, we could explore these therapies that, in conjunction with basically natural and synthetic pharmaceuticals, might be able to get somebody past a trauma. And I actually specifically remember the story that Julie was talking about. I don't know if it was Belgium or if it was, but it was like a Nordic country. It was like Northern Europe. And this girl was only like 19, and she'd been sexually assaulted, and she made that choice. And like, I remember being like reflexively completely against it. I'm like, how can you let an emotional trauma, dominate your life for the rest of your life? And for me, just to maybe not completely side with everybody on everything, I think on the physical side, if you just can't get past a certain level of physical pain on a day-to-day basis, and it's just medically impossible for you to get past that, that's euthanasia. If there's a psychological trauma that you can't get past, I'm not saying that you can't do it, but that path has to be exhaustive. And the reason why is because I have the instincts of Danabo, even though I don't agree with him that life is completely sacred. I do think that we should exhaust all possibilities before just being like, yeah, fuck it, you can just check out whenever you feel like.
I'm just okay. I mean, at risk of sounding patronizing, this is like mind blowing to me because I feel like I'm in a thing with a lot of people who would see these parallels with abortion. Like if you put up roadblocks into abortion, they would see them unjustifiable because it would be implicit in a person seeking abortion that they've already sought all their possibilities out. They've already thought through all their possibilities out. They didn't just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to fucking have an abortion, right? Any more so than anybody who's suicidal would just wake up one day and decide they're just going to fucking kill themselves. So I don't know why, like, I feel like implicit in all this, like, you don't, maybe I should phrase it another way. I don't think you need the state to put these barriers in the way. I think people are already going to explore this on their own.
Let me meme right back, okay? Last subject we were talking about.
But that wasn't a meme. I was a serious.
No. Okay, let me meme. You don't have to meme. I think last subject we were basically talking about how 20% of the population doesn't believe in a disease, how Republicans are stupid, how the average person probably doesn't have the ability to think for themselves. And I'm not trying to attack anybody, but I am trying to say that we shouldn't assume that people have exhausted all possibilities. And just to like finish this off with a personal example, I was told go see a therapist for a decade before I saw a therapist. I was told for a decade, there's no shame in medication. There's no shame in psychology. There's no stigma. All the fears that you have about your profession being affected by you seeking help don't exist. You need to go. And I still didn't believe them. I didn't believe them at all. So that's where I like to think of myself as a smart person, but I do a lot of stupid things. So I think that it should be legally codified, and I think there should be an exhaustive process for it. And then if you don't like the exhaustive process, then there's illicit means of doing things.
This is like perfectly analogous with abortion, because if you legally codify it, like we're talking about putting roadblocks in its way. You don't really need to do that. People are going to kill themselves whether the law says they can or not. If all you're going to put in is roadblocks dictating what people can and can't tell people, I'm not sure you're going to make like suicides any better. Like, in fact, I might argue you might make them worse.
I reject this argument because there are a lot of cultures that are fundamentally different statistically. The United States is actually like statistically more prevalent than suicides than almost all of Europe, except for France. And France literally makes up for like all of the suicides of the rest of Europe, and I think it's because they're a bunch of cynical, smug bastards. And that's me being, a little pessimistic against
What does
French
that have
people.
to do with what I said? Like, I'm saying you don't need a road. Yeah.
Because there's also a culture like Japan, who venerates older life, who venerates life in general, who like honors their elders and has like literally like citywide celebrations of the elderly. And that culture of life actually extends life, and it probably actually like statistically increases their suicide because they like live for so long, but their longevity is like inarguable. And that's where like I would want to create and promote a culture of life over a culture of death. And what I'm afraid you're saying is kind of like it doesn't matter.
Can we start on that Japan example? Because I'm not sure I understand your point. Japan has one of the highest rates of suicides in the developed world.
Do you know why it has the highest rates of suicide in the developed world?
Karoshi, because people work themselves to death.
Well,
it sounds like their culture of life is
fucking long. Like I'm not kidding. Like they literally do live super fucking long.
I was just gonna say that, like, I'm sure you could actually graph this out as to when people do commit suicide, though, right? And if they're not committing suicide, like later on, if like they're committing it like during like the heart of their work life, right? They're adult.
Yeah, they a lot of them do it in like their 30s and 40s.
Yeah,
we would need statistics to corroborate what we're saying.
Do you
LFA, if you think roadblocks don't work, wait one sec. If you think roadblocks don't work, what do you think about gun ownership? Do you think gun ownership's a roadblock? Do you think if less Americans own guns, there'd be less gun suicide?
To a degree.
So roadblocks do work to a degree.
They work to what end? Like
to reducing suicide, right?
To reducing suicides? No, I don't think roadblocks work to reducing suicides.
Why
so
not?
you don't
well, that's just because the behavior
of
of acquiring a weapon from a licensed dealer is fundamentally different from taking your own life. Like, one is an action I can do to myself without any restraint. The other requires me to interact with a third party.
Well, one of the
so
main
making
issues
it easier to commit suicide isn't helping prevent it. I don't understand.
I'm not arguing for making it. I'm not arguing for making it harder to commit suicide.
Well, that's what a robot would do, right?
Yeah, I am.
Doobie.
Yeah, that's counterpoints. I'm not sure.
So just a quick.
So you don't think robots work at all? I don't.
Hold on, Doobie, go ahead.
So just a quick point on the roadblocks thing. Then I want to ask, I think Jack and Johnny a question, if I can. So just to respond to what Sneaky was saying, I don't know what your name normally is. Anyway, LSP. Sorry. I think one of the main issues, right?
We look alike.
Okay, one of the main issues, right? I don't know if it's a main issue, but one fact is that having one of the main causes of gun death in the U.S. is suicide, right? Because it's just like a button. People are in that mind space. They're thinking about it, and they've got this button that they can press to just make it all go away, right? If you take that away from them, you're gonna have more people maybe slitting their wrist trying to hang themselves. But those have a much lower success rate than just shooting yourself in the head. Right. So secondly, I think maybe some of you didn't understand that this website, we hadn't had time to read the article, whatever. Didn't understand this website was somewhere where it was like a pro-choice suicide forum, where people were talking about suicide, and other people said, "Oh, that's your choice," and they were giving them like effective ways to do this, right, on this forum, and it's been connected to at least one death that we know of. And I'm sure if there was some real investigatory journalism done into this, they'd find more, right? Yeah. So do you guys still think that this website should be allowed to stay up, knowing that it's somewhere where suicide promotion takes place?
Yes. And I could easily defend that position for the same way I would. I'm sorry, Johnny, go for it.
Thank you. I was wondering what about our positions made you ask that question to me and Jack at the same time.
Well, I think at the start,
I actually very clearly created a piece of encapsulation that I think defines what would be encouraging suicide legally, and that I mean, I know that LSP said that would be a roadblock, and I as rather than just letting people do what they're going to do, which to the point of letting people do what they're going to do, if you are suicidal, there are pretty good chances that you don't own a gun because you are avoiding that option. That's a thing to think about, is that people actually do think about their actions before they take them, especially when they are dealing with something as serious as their own mortality.
Yeah. So I can answer your first question. So maybe I misunderstood, but I think the two of you, I think most of you, but I remember you two, I think your arguments were more clear to me. So that people need a space to talk about these things, right? And that was the reason this website shouldn't be shut down. But I don't disagree in that people should have the space to talk about these things. I think it's obviously really important. I've personally, just in my time on Discord, right, I've talked down at least a dozen people from like suicide attempts that I know, right? So, and some of them were like pretty intense. One of them was like a kid who was standing on the chair with a paracord around his neck while I was talking to him, right? Yeah. So I know that people need to talk about this stuff. I know that a lot of times they don't feel comfortable talking to their family or their friends, so they need just people to talk to, right? Like some kind of community to talk to. But this community went beyond that, right? This went to like what I would think is allowing the encouragement of suicide. So I'm just wondering, would you still allow this community, knowing that it was these people on here were encouraging the suicide?
If there was encouragement for suicide outside the interest with regards to the health of the persons affected, and if it was outside of a medical context, then I do believe that if those people that the entire site could be grounds for, would this be grounds for taking down a site federally if we found out that this was widespread, a community that was causing deaths? And that's the same, well, my question for that question is, do we know what's currently happening or anything that's being legislated with pro-ana groups or pro-comorbidity groups that are more
I don't.
common?
So, but like, what's your question? What's your answer to that question? Because like, kind of dance around it, John.
I'm trying to find the answer too. I'm speaking out loud. I'm thinking out loud. I'm sorry.
If you want, I could take it while you think.
Absolutely, Jack.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, part of this is I do not feel comfortable judging other people's pain. I am not other people. I don't know what's going on in their heads. I don't know how to judge the degree of pain that they are undergoing. And fundamentally, I think one of my main disagreements with the rest of this panel seems to be that I think that every individual, regardless of whether I think their reason is good or not, has a right to try and take their life. And I do not support that. I would try and prevent that through various means. But I think that if you're set on taking your life and you are in a position to rationally go through that, I'm not in a position to like judge you for it. Like I don't ever want to put myself in a position where I'm like, you aren't in enough pain to kill yourself.
But how do we know these
We're
people?
we're not talking about moral judgments, right? We're talking about the outcome here. So
right, but we have had a lot of conversations so far about whether someone has the right to kill themselves. And my position is that yes, people do have the right to kill themselves fundamentally. And so like a lot of the disagreement that I've been hearing largely seems to be about the manner people go about killing themselves. And like, yeah, I'm totally on board with a lot of the other measures that have been put forward, the ethical euthanasia programs, or like finding fulfillment in like a better death, all of that fantastic stuff. But also like, I've lost really close friends to suicide, and I feel deeply uncomfortable saying that I knew better than they did. You know,
I'd like to answer Doobie's question more definitively if I can, really quick, and then
I'll also take a stab at that.
Actually, so your question is essentially, should we be bringing a legal suit down on the individuals who use this site to encourage suicide, or can we also take accountable the entire site itself? And that answer is essentially, they're having meetings about that right now. The Senate is having meetings with you might have heard that they're having the big 3 tech CEOs right now, week after week. They're having hours and hours of conversation about something called, I believe it's Section 203, which is basically legislating with purposefully vague language how we hold entire websites and servers accountable versus the individuals who use those sites to commit illegal acts, such as encouraging someone to kill themselves.
Okay, but what's your position on that issue? I know these talks are happening, but what's your position on like the topic?
My position is probably that if you take away the ability of sites to govern themselves, you are making the internet less and less public, and I think to that end that's a bad thing. So I think for right now, sticking to legislating the individuals who commit these crimes and then having communities be shut down on other grounds is probably legally the best route. If
yeah,
you want
can I ask a quick follow-up question?
Well, yeah. Ask a quick follow-up. Then I want to get Jack, because she wanted to answer your question as well. So.
Well, actually, it's to Jack.
Okay.
So how far would we take this? Would you be okay with a website existing that is specifically pro-suicide? If you're suicidal, you go into the website, people are going to encourage you to commit suicide. They're going to give you effective ways to do it, and that's the point of the website. Okay, are you okay with that existing?
I mean, so I don't know how familiar people are on this panel with like websites like 4chan or 8chan or websites that are fringe in this nature. I don't know how familiar you all are with this, but these websites exist whether or not we want them to, and they exist outside of the purview of the United States to control them. And so I think that largely this is something that we need to have a better way of dealing with than just trying to legislate it out of existence, because they're going to exist whether we want them to or not.
I feel like you're avoiding the question.
No,
Okay,
I'm not. I'm saying that again, whether we want them to or not,
It'll be legal whack-a-mole.
it renders the question pointless. And I'm extremely pro free speech. So again, I've already said that. Yeah, I think that these places are. I think that these places are a product of, if you value free speech, then yeah, you would allow them to live. You allow them to keep existing.
Speeches of fucking.
Doobie, I just want to jump in.
This is an argument against all laws, right? Why should we make murder legal? People are going to do it anyway.
Doobie, I actually want to kind of give you my answer to your question, and then I actually want to back you up on that. So basically, specifically to answer your question, I think my solution would be kind of what Johnny Scarlett just said, where you would hold the individuals who participated in illicit behavior. You would hold them accountable, not necessarily these spaces specifically. So for instance, like 4chan, 8chan, there's a whole bunch of Holocaust denial and some memes about fighting the federal government and shooting ATF agents and like all that kind of stuff. You wouldn't shut down the website. They're just going to create a new website and do it again. And then if you individually prosecute them for basically what amounts to thought crimes, that's a really bad precedent to set. However, if a group of people actually got together and they conspired to commit a terrorist attack or or kidnap a sitting governor in Michigan or something like that, then at that point you have a real crime that you can prosecute. In the same way with a suicide scenario where somebody encourages somebody who's of otherwise sound mind and body or sound body to commit suicide, then they would be liable for maybe a criminal penalty or a civil penalty for the family for a wrongful death. But before you address that, I just wanted to address something that Jack said that I think is really interesting. You kind of asked the panel, like, do you believe that people have a right to commit suicide? And I do believe that they have a right to commit suicide the same way that you have our natural right. So you have the natural right to the freedom of the conscience. Nobody can control what's inside your brain. You have the right to free speech. I mean, obviously society grants you that right, but you should have the ability to articulate yourself. You have within certain purviews. You have the right to defend yourself. Each society decides what that defense can look like, but these are all quote unquote natural rights. And that's the same way that I would see the right to death. Just because you have the right doesn't mean you have the unfettered right. And just because you have the right doesn't mean that we should make it easy for you. So I know LSP and both Jack don't like the fact that I'm policing other people's choice in that way. But I do think you could, like, some of our greatest heroes, some of our greatest artists, some of our greatest politicians, well, maybe not politicians, but greatest artists and heroes killed themselves. And I think that if we had like a more honest and frank conversation about suicidality, if there was a legal option, but it took more time, and as a part of that legal option, you had to seek out psychological assistance in order to potentially improve your life to help you avoid that decision, we might be able to retain otherwise phenomenal people in this weird thing we call life.
Mm-hmm. Well, so like my general position is largely that, like, again, and maybe it's analogous to like gun rights in the United States. Like, a lot of people really, really chafe against, your ability to easily go out and buy a gun. I'm pro-gun, so that's not a problem for me. But like for other people, like a lot of conservatives, for example, would say no, that these are overbearing actions of a tyrannical government, and and I would agree with them. And also, I would agree that there is a certain amount of overstepping going on here.
CTV and you just became friends.
And and the other thing is, like, if we're gonna have a conversation about how to like reduce suicide, like the suicide rate, I'm all for that conversation. But that's not exactly what the question was that was posed. It was like in this particular instance, and like, I agree with like the right of the parents to try and sue these people. I don't think that that's wrong. But also, like, I do think that to a certain degree, like, we should protect the ability for people to have these conversations freely and openly. And I think by having them free and open conversations, we can largely try and neutralize the bad effects of these conversations. Like, if these people didn't have to hide in obscure corners of the internet, that might be a positive thing, right? And so I think that if we are talking about policing these issues, and if we are throwing up all these barriers, like, no, you can only consider this, you can only do this if you're talking with a mental health professional. Well, there, again, and you touched on this yourself, counterpoints, there is a lot of stigma around these things. Like, I fought going to therapy for years too. Like, it's something that a lot of people don't want to do, and there's also a financial barrier to that as well. So, like, if we're going to talk about reducing rates of suicidality, I'm all for that. And we can do it by Medicare for all. Let's decommodify mental health care and, make our society a little bit better and safer, huh?
There's also the question of a good death. I think that there's a lot there, but being at peace with that finality is really kind of the core of the question of how this becomes a choice and not something that you are strained into doing, that you are doing under duress, right? That's really the idea of something like the Order of the Good Death, where alternative morticians like Caitlin Doty encourage people to satisfy their end of life needs, which are very real and pertinent for every single person on this earth.
Which is weird because I don't even think, like, as interested as I am in what you're saying, I don't even think I know what it is. That's how stigmatized this entire conversation is. So, like, what are the needs of a person who's ending their life? What are the needs of a person who's, kind of looking the maw of eternity in the face, and they're like, how do you face that well?
Can
I've already kind of faced that counterpoint.
Primer that will take approximately one paragraph.
Please do.
In my brain. One of the things that keeps us from talking about death is our fear of death. So the first thing you have to do is figure out what you're afraid of. Are you afraid of how your body will be treated? There are ways around that. Are you afraid of not having control over what will happen to your belongings? There are legal avenues around that. Are you afraid of pain or anything like that? There are therapies and groups that are specifically catered toward that. These are all problems that can be solved, but they generally take a group effort by a family toward the end of someone's life, and these conversations need to be encouraged.
What about the problem of non-existence? Have you been able to solve that one yet?
That one is actually surprisingly what gives me peace. I'm
you're a braver person than me.
I'm kind of a person with the life experience to know that in about 60 years I'll be good. And something that has brought me a lot of peace is actually planning out having a clean burial where I will not be pumped full of formaldehyde, and I'll probably be in a wicker basket and nourishing the earth. That brings me a lot of peace.
Rad.
I don't know. I think if you want to run a website where you are allowed to encourage suicidal people to kill themselves, you shouldn't need to hide in the dark spaces of the internet. Like, counting the days until you're noticed and you get shut down, you need to find another site host or a lawyer for the criminal charges being pressed against you. I think that's what should happen. I don't think those people need a place where they can speak and have their free speech and jerk themselves off while they're telling vulnerable people to buy a gun and shoot themselves in the head. I don't think that's. People talk about free speech. I don't give a fuck about free speech. It doesn't exist. It's a silly concept. These people
I appreciate you being
should not. These people should not be allowed to say this shit. They should not be allowed to post this shit on their websites. And if they do, they should face criminal charges.
It's unrelated. Sorry.
So we're going to go into closing statements on this before we continue on to our next topic. We're already over the time limit, but I wanted to give you guys more space on something like this. Before I do that, before we jump to closing statements, though, everyone, if you're enjoying these types of conversations, I have them all the time. Not only this happens to be a closed panel. We also have open walk-on panels where you, audience members, as you, are allowed to join in, right? So if that sounds interesting at all, then please give me a follow. And if you are not currently subbed, please sub to the channel. And if you can, donate bits, donate subs. And also we have a donation button below the screen. If you scroll down, it's a PayPal button that can also allow you to support the stream directly. I need your help to do that to keep all this content coming to you. So these interesting conversations with interesting people. So thank you for that. All right. So next, we're going to go to Riverboat Jack for a closing statement on this topic.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I fundamentally just reject the notion that like freedom of speech doesn't matter the same way I would reject the notion that like freedom to bear arms doesn't matter. These things do matter. They're the cohesive elements of our society, and if you throw them out, we are going to have a huge problem. Like far beyond like whether we are policing one site that has speech that we find personally objectionable. And like we literally in America allow people to walk around openly declaring that they have intentions to commit genocide. Like, and people are like, yeah, that's what we fight to protect America for. You know, like people will literally go to bat for Nazis in this country. And so like, I'm not here to defend Nazis. I'm not here to tell you that suicide is good, actually. I'm just here to tell you that we live in a free country and I value freedom. And that's what I'm here to advocate for, even if it's a personal freedom that I generally am pretty against and would advocate against, such as suicide. And that, I guess, is my entire take on that.
Okay, fair enough. Next, CTV.
Well, I think that the room did a pretty good job of covering it all the way around. Freedom of speech is pretty absolute to me. I think that the ability to be able to have hard conversations is exactly why that amendment was put into place. That being said, though, that amendment applies specifically to Congress, right? So if states wanted to be able to have their own legislation with regard to it, there would be a conversation that I would be more than willing to have. But with that in mind, the ability for somebody to take their own life comes with the ultimate conclusion of there's no way to enforce any legislation of preventing somebody from killing themselves, because if they're successful, your legislation was pointless. So at the end of the day, you just have to try to be patient with people, and if they reach out to you, take the time to talk to them and find out what's going on with them, right? Because if you don't do that, then you're shooting your own self in the foot as far as your ideology is concerned, and you're definitely not bringing any more love into the world. And with that,
thank you. Next, we'll go to Danabo.
All right. I sat and listened on this one because there was nothing really much to add, and people weren't really offering anything much of substance apart from my free speech, and we shouldn't have laws because they don't work. In regards to should promoting suicide be protected speech, it's not. It's already in the First Amendment that you can't incite violence, and they're not protected. These people should be prosecuted for promoting violence the same way any hate group would be if they were inciting violence. They're not protected under the First Amendment. You don't have that free speech. And there are no inalienable rights without monopoly of violence. Your government gives you those rights, and they can take them away, and they should in this case. Okay. There you go.
All right. Next, we'll go to counterpoints.
So I actually really appreciated this conversation. I felt like we touched a lot of really interesting things. Johnny Scarlett, I might actually go check out that community or whatever based off your recommendation. That was super fucking interesting. And I think I have my own issues with the subject that I am interested in exploring. My point is I do share Danabo's and Doobie's maybe instinct to protect life. That being said, I've also been around long enough and been sick enough and injured enough that I know that there are some things worse than death. And that's kind of just something that I came from experience, but non-existence still terrifies the fuck out of me. So it's a tough subject. I encourage anybody. I started this. I'll try to wrap up really quickly, but I started this story or this segment with an anecdote about like my personal issues. Basically, what I would say is my life has gotten a lot better since those moments of weakness. I started interacting with my community more, my family more. I built the life that I wanted. I'm very much enjoying my life right now, talking with you fine folks. And I'm not saying that things always get better, but I am saying that if your problems are not insurmountable, it's worth it to hang in there. So if you're feeling a little fucked up, if you're feeling a little weak, it's okay to be weak. Get some help and start pushing for the things you want in your life, because some of those things are reachable.
Exactly. Okay. Johnny Scarlett.
Well, when you, all right, I take this time to just say, if you are struggling, if you find yourself homeless, if you find yourself without a car or a way to get a job, we have in every city places where you can find beds. Once you find a bed, you can get help through the government to have a monthly stipend. You can get into permanent housing, some form of permanent housing. The second that you are in permanent housing with an address that you can give to your local clinic so that you can get on some form of free Medicaid, please do so. This saved my life. Without the free services that are available, you would not have a person sitting in front of you. I would not be here. And it's super great. It's just great that those are available. I want you guys to take advantage of them. And get research, use the internet that you're currently on to research every little bit of medical care that you can get, to get every hour out of you'll probably get about 15 minutes with a psychiatrist, but believe me, it's worth it to get life-saving medication. You might get about 30 minutes at first with a therapist, but believe me, it's worth it to go into cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. And I know that I'm taking a lot of time, but dude, like, these institutions are there. Please take advantage of them.
Okay. Next, we'll go to Doobie.
Okay. So, the freedom thing. We live in a free country, right? And that freedom's gotten us generations of children indoctrinated into death cults like Christianity and Islam, tens of thousands of people shooting themselves and other people with weapons that they shouldn't have access to, the spread of violent, hate-filled ideologies like Nazism, misinformation so widespread, a sizable portion of the population believes that COVID is a bioweapon sent over by the Chinese. The sad truth, right, is freedom's a false god. It's a fucking myth, right? Sometimes people need to be led around like sheep. We need to tell them what they can and can't do, and when they get out of line, they need to be punished, right? The nonsense uttered by these people on these forums who want to encourage other people, suicidal people, to kill themselves is not worthy of protection. They should be stopped. They should be punished. And supporting anything less than that is enabling toxic behavior. And I think it leads to people dying, right? Enabling that kind of shit leads to death. Right? I want less death. That's my position. Right. So if you're so wrapped up in your freedom and your fucking free speech that you're willing to hug it while someone's hanging themselves in the back, then fucking do it. I'm just not there.
Okay. LSP.
Yeah, just firstly, I want to point out the loophole paradox CTV brought us when he says free speech is absolute unless the states do something, and then, well, I guess free speech isn't absolute. Which is another way of saying free speech isn't absolute. Largely, I find myself agreeing with Riverboat Jack on the issue. Basically, if you have a right to life, it necessarily follows you have a right to death. I cannot, fundamentally, I cannot justify penalizing people for telling you that you can explore that right if I agree that there's a right to death. And in much the same way, I can't penalize somebody for telling you to explore the option of an abortion if you have the right to determine whether or not you don't want to go through a pregnancy. To me, these are much the same. It's questions of bodily autonomy. The arguments should apply in similar fashion. I think Doobie's having. I'm sorry, is it Doobie? Is that the author? That's the authoritarian. Doobie is having the more fundamental conversation that I actually think is more fun, and I kind of wish we could explore it further, which is a question of what is better for the future of humanity? What produces better results, an authoritarian system or a free system? And he's right. If you give freedom allowances, you have to deal with this depression. You have to deal with suicidal ideation and people turning themselves over to Nazism, right? If he's absolutely right that if you don't infantilize people and lead them, sometimes they go astray. And I agree 100% that these tend to be bad results. Where my fundamental disagreement comes from him, which is where our split happens, where I'm a libertarian and he's authoritarian, has to be what makes a better society on a more fundamental level. Is it better to force people to do right decisions if it is against their fundamental nature, or is it better to give them the option to explore these on their own and respect the decisions they make, knowing that the decisions they make, if virtuous, were arrived by their own agency? That is a more fundamental question. It's a more interesting question. It's not enough you can just take away drugs from people, and you can just take away alcohol from people, and you can just take away suicide from people or free speech from people to produce the results you like. But that doesn't produce a society that is really, I guess fundamentally alive in a sense, right? They're a society of drones that have been guided towards a certain direction, and while that might produce better results, it produces worse people. That's the more fundamental issue. I love that conversation. I would love to have that conversation more with you.
So, okay. On that note, well, one thing first. If anyone is feeling hopeless, feeling that you're thinking of taking your own life, please, before you do anything like that, please visit the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The number is in chat. Please, everyone, a number is in chat. Use that resource. And if you're not in the States, well, if you're not in the States, there's probably a resource in your home country. But even if not, you can still go to that hotline. They'll help you no matter where you are. So thank you all, and I want to see you tomorrow, next year, wherever, right? So please take that option first of calling the National Suicide Prevention Hotline before doing anything else. But all right, so I think that is actually an interesting question. So I'll put up the chat, or sorry, not the chat, because they don't get a vote. Fuck them. To the panelists. We have two other topics we could be discussing. One about Calvert House, the other about the direction of the Republican Party. Do you like to have explore that, or is this authoritarian question more interesting to you guys? Authoritarianism versus freedom, which is something we keep exploring this entire time since our step forward doobie is here. Would you like to explore that, Jack?
I mean, I'd prefer that over the Rittenhouse question. I find the Rittenhouse question to be smaller and not as fun to talk about.
Okay, counterpoints. That was your question.
Nah, it's fine. I was looking forward to getting into it with Mix, but if Mix is down, I know we still have we still need to schedule a 3-way debate about Antifa. Maybe we could do like a second topic on Rittenhouse. That would be cool. So if she's down to do it another night, I'm very happy to move on with whatever everybody else wants to do.
And we can schedule that. We can do it again next week. Like that's not like a topic that expires so quickly. Before we do that, though, thank you, Benjamin Dixon, for the raid. That's super kind of you. Ben, I'd like to talk to you sometime. I looked I'm not sure if you're in chat, but I looked to see if you had a Discord. I didn't see a Discord on your Twitch page because I was trying to actually get in contact with you. I would love to actually talk with you. Thank you for the support, man. This is really kind. Another large raid from you. Everyone, go check out Benjamin Dixon. He's tearing it up on his own channel. He's a big YouTuber, actually, and you'll see him in all kinds of places, for instance, like TYT. So check Benjamin Dixon out. He's been very, very kind to this channel. Holy crap. Yeah, thank you for that, Ben Dixon. Hopefully, maybe we can get in contact with each other at some point in time in the future. I'd love to talk to you. Okay. So moving on. So counterpoints. Authoritarianism for now.
You got a 0.75 vote. Sounds fun, but I'm not going to commit to it.
Gotcha. All right. CTV.
Because I think we're all just going to be going up against Doobie, so I don't know if that's fun for Doobie.
Doobie will love it. Am I right, DB?
I can handle you guys. It's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he's handled
Doobie
much
wants the
worse
gangbang.
for when he comes from.
All right.
The depths of the politics Discord server. He's handled much worse than us. CTV. What do you want to do?
I feel like topic 3 was going to be more interesting.
Okay, you feel topic 3. All right. Well, I know you're LSP. I know your vote. Dianabo.
I feel like the Rittenhouse question is authoritarianism versus libertarianism. It's whether violent criminals should be released or not, whether you should lock them up and be authoritarian or you should give them liberty and let them out. So either way, it's the same question. I'm happy.
Okay, all right. Johnny?
I will defer to the panel. I'm happy to
Great
talk.
centrist. Thank you. So we will... What'd you say? Would you say counterpoints?
Oh, I was saying, I think Mix wanted to come back after that subject, so.
Yeah, I sent her a message.
She might be the tiebreaker.
Yeah, hopefully she'll get here soon. I don't know. But can't really wait. Hopefully she'll be around again soon.
Why
You're
don't
the
we
tiebreaker, bud.
sort of rephrase the question and go into authoritarianism within the slants of the other question, so that Viv can come back and it can still be a separate topic.
Okay. So you mean combine the two, or is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Johnny? Okay. Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure how to rephrase the question to combine the two. Dianabo, could you combine those two, the Cal Rittenhouse and the authoritarianism versus freedom?
In the form of a compound question, probably not. It is just a case of whether we should be authoritarian and lock violent criminals up without trial, or whether we should be libertarian and prove guilt.
Okay,
Well,
we can do the
questions
Rittenhouse
that we-
stuff.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Well, I mean, the questions are fundamentally the same. The question is, do we trust the state to be, to have the authority to detain people without bail? Like that, the bail is the issue fundamental to the question here, which was a hard-fought right over centuries ago, but some people don't give a shit about it anymore.
Why don't we do the Rittenhouse question, but we give Doobie a lot of latitude and LSP a lot of latitude to rephrase it into authoritarianism versus libertarianism, and then we just don't call them out.
All right. This has been very inconclusive. All right, so we'll try that. I don't know. Doobie, LSP, take it absolutely where you want to. I will not rein you in. If you want to take it there, that's fine. And anyone wants to join them, that's okay. All right. I'll read the Cal Rittenhouse question.
Vivian's here.
Oh, is Vivian here?
Okay, in the chat, anyway.
She doesn't get a vote. She wasn't here.
Okay. That's what it's like. Wait, if you don't show up.
That's authoritarianism now. That's authoritarian. Deprived her of a voting right.
Yeah. Mix. Oh, there you are. Oh, there you are.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey. What's going on? Sorry. What did I miss?
Okay. So we're about to. So we're gonna do the Cal Rittenhouse question next, but we're gonna actually mix that with an authoritarianism versus freedom discussion, because that keeps coming up. So if that comes up, you'll understand why. So I'm just gonna read the question. Guys, take it where you want to. Okay. So the question was topic 3. Kyle Rittenhouse, the teen who shot and killed 2 men during the Kenosha uprisings, has been released on $2 million bail. Should the bail system even exist? High bills are set when someone is alleged to have committed a heinous crime and is considered a danger to the public. But if that's the case, shouldn't we keep those individuals locked up despite their ability to pay? So credit to Counterpoints for coming up with this. And yeah, we're going to just jump right in. Again, take it where you want to. You are free. If you want to go through the authoritarian route, that's fine. All right, Riverboat.
Yeah, I mean, largely I don't think that this has anything to do with Kyle Rittenhouse very much. I fundamentally oppose the bail system. I do not think we should have a society in which the rich are able to get out on bail while the poor have to languish in jail. And just as like a bit of backing to what I'm saying, about 3 out of every 5 people in U.S. jails right now are not convicted of a crime. They're just there because they can't pay to be free. And I think that this is a huge miscarriage of justice, and also a lot of the data that we have suggests that these people would come back for their court dates anyway. So largely, this is just a tiered system that currently exists to benefit the wealthy and punish the poor before they've been convicted of a crime. So I reject the premise that this should exist.
Okay. We'll go to CTV.
Well, in this system, we have the whole idea of being innocent until proven guilty, right? So, with that in mind, the fact that we have so much evidence as to what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse before he's even gotten to trial, and right now he's alleged to be, he is charged with first-degree intentional homicide, first-degree reckless homicide, and attempted first-degree intentional homicide, right? I personally, after having reviewed a lot of video and seen a lot of discussion about the events that were laid out, that I believe this young man was defending himself. However, that being said, the system in place is to ensure that he is treated like he is innocent before proven guilty of any crime. I feel like that the $2 million bail might be a bit excessive. However, the fact that he was even given a bail, I do feel like is some sort of justice, considering the evidence that we are aware of ahead of time. And I think that this is categorically different, and I think this is probably what weighed on the judge's mind when he decided to grant bail in the amount of. So I think the system in this case is working as we would like for it to. Not assuming guilt from the start and not giving the government the ability to fuck somebody over simply because they want to.
Okay. I'll do LSB and Doobie at the end. And again, you guys can take it exactly where you want to. Counterpoints.
Yeah, I'm super.
Amount of time, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. I'm super fucking conflicted because on one hand, I kind of agree with like Riverboat Jack instinctively, like, what is this system where we're just exclusively fucking over poor people? Rich people can basically have the privilege of leaving for heinous crimes. And then also, as somebody who served in law enforcement, one of the most frustrating things for me was taking like known violent criminals with like rap sheets that were like as long as they were alive. Who basically told me to my face that they were willing to kill me and execute my family, and they bonded out next day. Meanwhile, the homeless guy that I took to jail, who has never committed a violent crime, but he did, trespass after warning or something like that, he can't afford bail, so he's stuck in jail for the next, 3 days until, like, over the weekend until he can see a judge. So my instinct is with Riverboat Jack, but then with CTV, kind of brings up a good point. Like, does the state have the right then to arbitrarily hold people that it feels violent? And then also in a case where I'm sympathetic with CTV, where I have like some self-defense inclinations with the Rittenhouse thing, like, is it right that he would just sit in a jail cell for the next 6 months to a year while he's waiting for his trial? And I don't have a good answer.
All right. Danville.
All right. This is where I put my authoritarian hat on a little bit. Should the government be able to lock you up if you're suspected of a violent crime? Yes. Especially if you've committed previous violent offences, they should be able to lock you up without bail. But cash bail shouldn't fundamentally exist. If it's not a violent crime, you should be released. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Johnny Scarlett.
So this kind of circles all the way back to something that I mentioned before, wherein we should be classifying medical care as labor that is guaranteed to be funded. Because if you're going to have a way to safely detain people for the good of those around them and themselves, it probably needs to be on a medical basis, right? So if we got rid of the bail system, let's say, and we started letting people just chill until their due court date because they're innocent until proven guilty, what is the bail preventing? I was under the impression that it was mainly flight, and you have no guarantee that that person is even going to flee to another jurisdiction. And two things on that. If they do flee to another jurisdiction, that's they're committing a crime and they should probably be caught. and sentenced to that crime. The other thing is we have such poor infrastructure with the communication among law enforcement in this country, state to state, that that's really what the problem is with flight is that they're fleeing into a jurisdiction where you can't easily communicate to people and let them know about this person. So there's a lot of layers here, but my main takeaway is that if we are detaining people for anything, it should be a proven inability to conduct themselves in a safe manner for themselves and those around them. Not because they can't pay a certain amount of money because they have been charged with a crime.
Mix Vivian Wolf.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into like Carl Rittenhouse self-defense or not self-defense shit, because, I mean, I have my own views on that. But like, none of us have access to the full fucking information. You know, I've read as many affidavits as I possibly can, but I can't. You know, we don't know what was said at his bail hearing, as far as I know. I haven't been able to find that. So, yeah, we don't know the full facts of the case, and we won't until after the case is done. As for bail, bollocks to it. It's just like allowing rich people the privilege to get out of jail when poor people can't for similar kind of crimes, just like Counterpoint said. You know, homeless dude who's like trespassed with a warning, staying in prison while a violent criminal gets out because he has access to better funds. I'd be kind of pissed at the idea of like some fucking random homeless dude being put in a jail cell for trespass anyway, but whatever. Yeah, no, I think everybody here pretty much agrees. Like, bail is an unfair system and should be abolished.
Okay, Danaba.
I do.
Oh, you're the bank. I'm sorry, I missed that. I apologize. All right, so we got Ellis. We'll go to LSP first.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things people said that like really stood out to me. I don't think it's authoritarian to say the government can lock you up. I don't remember who said it, but I don't think it's authoritarian to say the government can lock you up if you've committed a violent crime. I don't know who said like I'm getting authoritarian here, but I mean, that's
that was me, SP. It's authoritarian because you've not been proven yet. It's not been proven in court yet. You haven't had a trial. They're just locking you up. That's why I would consider.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to consider it authoritarian to lock somebody up who is suspected of committing a violent crime. As for, I think there's a lot of misconceptions people are having about the bail system here. Like, for one, we've got like again, and there's some room to criticize this. We have a constitutional amendment against excessive bail. The big criticism of that is like it's all up to like a lot of judicial discretion. The other criticism I have, I'm sorry, of a lot of the takes everyone has is that they seem to take this idea that if there's no bail, it's just there's no alternative. I guess, like, I'm not sure I take this. Like, one, bail is returned upon the conclusion of a trial. It's only an incentive to allow somebody to be released if it's an incentive to allow somebody to be released. If people can't make bail, there's an option to, it's called ROR. It's released on your own recognizance. It's an option to do for people who can't make bail, who also don't pose a flight risk for any of their crimes. All of these are like the tools for all of these things are available. And they're there to accommodate people. As for like a cash bail issue, like there is different kinds of collateral. It varies from state to state. You don't have to do cash bail. Like you could still keep the bail system and just have different collateral that lets people get out. Like sooner. I don't have an issue with this. Like I feel like a lot of the criticisms people have just as of locking up people who are suspected of crimes, and I'm not sure they would actually commit to this idea if they thought it through fully to its logical end. Like, of course, if somebody's committed a violent crime and you assume they can't function in society, there's nothing wrong with denying bail. You don't release them on their own recognizance, and you don't set bail, which happens all the time. Judges don't set bail. That was a bit ranty. There you go.
Okay. All right. Doobie. And in case you are just joining us from that raid, Doobie is the Lovecraftian monstrosity on the side of your screen. So, Doobie, please.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I have to agree with LCF, LSP, the last guy who went. Spoons. Okay, Spoon. Yeah, there's nothing authoritarian about keeping someone in prison if they're suspected of a crime. That's kind of silly. I'm kind of torn on bail, to be honest with you. I think the concept is there's some buy-in, right? So if you need to put up $1,000 bail, $10,000 bail, there's a better chance. And I think this is actually proven, like with the stats, it's like 15% more likely to come back and actually show up at court. So that's kind of the concept, right? You having to put down this money, you show up, you get the money back. So people are more likely to show up and get the money back, right? So I can understand that. I do have an issue, I think, with this kind of being used as like a tool to keep poor people in jail. I don't know how I feel about that. Like here in California, we recently actually rejected the repeal of the cash bail system. Right? They wanted to replace it with a risk assessment tool, or I think pretrial risk assessment tools is what they're called. Basically, the idea is that the judge would be able to use these tools to determine whether or not these people were flight risks, and if they were flight risks, they didn't get out, and if they weren't flight risks, they got out, right, without having to pay any kind of bail. The problem, actually, the ACLU came out against that, and I think the issue they raised is they were concerned that these risk assessment tools might actually keep a lot of these poor people in jail anyway. So you'd actually end up with more people in jail at the end of the day, because these tools would rank these people as more at risk, more prone to not show up at trial. I don't really have any kind of like principled opposition to the cash bail thing. I think the concept makes sense. I don't like that it seems like rich people can kind of buy their way out of it. But even that, right, is kind of like, given how cash bail actually works, this $2 million bail that they set on him, how that actually works when you go to a bail bondsman is you put down like 10%, right? And you don't get that back, right? So the bail bondsman keeps that. If you don't show up, the bail bondsman, who is basically given their the bond is like a surety, right? So it's like the bail bondsman saying, hey, I'm vouching for this person. They're going to show up at court, right? And if they don't show up at court, I'm liable for the money, right? So if you don't show up, the bail bondsman's liable to pay the court whatever the full bail was. So they send a bounty hunter after you, right? So it's not actually true that these people are just kind of getting off. They still do need to show up at court at some point. It's just much easier to live your life while the trial's playing out if you could actually get out of court or get out of jail while that process is taking place. And if you're poor, you have like obviously, you don't show up for work for a few weeks, you're stuck in jail waiting for this trial, you're going to lose your job, right? You're not able to take your kid to school. Your entire fucking life falls apart, right? And someone who has a lot more money, they're probably not going to deal with those problems. They can maybe pay for a babysitter or something, right? Pay for someone else to drive their kid to school or whatever. So I don't know. I'm really torn on the bail issue. I'd probably prefer like some kind of hybrid system with cash bail. And if you can't afford the bail, then we have these risk assessment tools that would replace that. I think that kind of already exists. I think that's something that the last guy just mentioned. But if that does exist, that's what I prefer. I don't think it makes sense.
That's a really long ass opening statement that took forever and went in many different directions.
A really long ass opening statement.
I would like to jump in at this point to whether being locked up by the government for being suspected of a crime is authoritarian. It absolutely is. As a Muslim-looking person, I have been detained many times for just looking Muslim, or suspected of a crime of being Muslim. I've been detained by an authoritarian government and put in a cell for 24 hours for looking funny. So yeah, it's absolutely authoritarian. To say that it's not, I don't know. I don't know how.
Okay, can I please step in?
One time. Deanna, finish your point.
I can be accused of a violent crime and be locked up without ever touching a person. There you go.
Wait, you were locked up for looking Muslim or for matching the description of someone else who committed a crime?
For looking brown. That's it.
No,
You're a
okay.
Muslim-looking person.
No,
Yeah.
when they put you on the cell, did they say, "Oh, we're sticking you in here because you look brown. We want to make sure you're not brown," or was it
Well, yeah,
because
they
you
can
matched a
accuse you of anything,
description
can't it?
of someone else who
And
would
what's
have
the
committed a crime?
description? A guy that's brown with a beard. That's it. That's
Okay.
the description.
No, there was.
That's absolutely authoritarian.
Oh,
And if you're okay
God.
with that, that's fine.
Okay, we need to we really need to lay down some definitions pretty clearly. To my understanding, authoritarianism is when somebody doesn't have a say in how they are governed, right? It is the opposite of democracy. It is people ruling over you without your consent and without you being able to bring grievances or attempt to change the system, right? That's authoritarianism. It's not necessarily when you get locked up because you look a bit brown or whatever.
Both of those things still apply, Vivian. I'm in America as a resident. I don't get to vote. I've got no say in the democracy of this place.
Yeah,
So
and
that still applies.
that is relatively authoritarian, right? Because you
No,
have
it's
no
not.
say in how you're governed. But this also has to be taken in a communal fashion, because obviously if you consent is one of those things that can be withdrawn at any time. However, you can't have somebody, for example, I don't know, somebody murders somebody and then they're like, I withdraw my consent to be governed at this point, right? Like because then the whole system fucking falls apart. So it does have to be like a communal thing. And that's one of the really tricky things about putting together any kind of like really libertarian or anarchic kind of society. But I would challenge you on the idea that these things that happen to you are like particularly authoritarian because they locked you up. It's more authoritarian because, as you brought up, you have no say in how you're governed in the United States because you don't have a vote. Yeah.
I'm not sure I agree with this. Well, for whatever it's worth, I don't think I agree with this framework at all. That authoritarian means you only have a democrat. I'm sorry, that the opposite of authoritarian is just having a democratic say. No, I think the people can be just as authoritarian as like any state, like exerting itself, right? The people can just like vote for a state to have more authority. That is authoritarian. It's the degree of control the state is able to exert over somebody. That's what determines what authoritarian is, not how democratic it is.
Wait. The amount of a say somebody can exert over somebody is directly proportionate to the amount of a say they have in how they're governed, right? if you can just say no, I don't consent to you governing me that way, then it's impossible for them to exert that.
Let's say a collective like consents to having a state that tortures people. Would you say that state's authoritarian or libertarian?
If the state tortures people and violates their autonomy in that way, like that's why I said it gets very difficult trying to formulate libertarian societies. It's one of the reasons that I believe that the larger a democracy is, naturally the more authoritarian it is, because you all are always presented with this problem of the tyranny of the majority and minority groups necessarily being disenfranchised by simply being the minority group.
Jack?
So one of the things that we first need to clarify is that ending cash bail does not mean that anyone who we want to just gets locked up. Like we can know this because there are places in the United States that have ended cash bail. And so we can look at the data that we have from those places, namely New Jersey and Washington, D.C. And so we have data in the United States that we can base policy on. And this is something I am a big nerd about. So, like, largely where this has been implemented, where we have ended the practice of cash bail, there hasn't been a change in people responding to their court dates. And in some cases, it's actually gone up. Like, more people have gone to their court dates. And part of this is like, I think there are people on this panel who have like this idea that if we end cash bail, you're just going to get pulled into the jails and you're going to be left there to rot. And that's just not how the system works in the places where we've gotten rid of cash bail. Instead, what happens is that you have a presumption of release. And so what has to happen is that in the pretrial process, your prosecutors have to prove that you are a flight risk, which is not what they have to do currently. And so there is still a process here during which the burden of proof is on the people prosecuting you to prove that you are indeed going to run.
Counterpoints?
Yeah, so I wanted to address a few a few contentions that I kind of heard during opening statements as well. So I kind of heard that like some people can be released on recognizance if they're not able to meet cash bail. That's kind of true because basically due to overcrowding, we will release homeless people eventually. But generally speaking, they end up having to fake addresses. And if they're not able to provide an address, they will stay in the jail. And if they provided a false address in which they were not located at previously in a prior time that they were arrested, they basically could be held up until their court date because technically they cannot be found once released. So that is a risk for poor people and homeless people that disproportionately affects poor people and homeless people. Then talking about, people with higher risks are set for higher penalties or higher collateral. That was actually one of the challenges that we had was we had high-level drug lieutenants and drug captains who wouldn't even fucking blink to post either multi-thousand, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. We even had a guy who paid $250,000 cash in order to be released from jail early. He did show up to his court date, but at the same time, this was a violent motherfucker. And the reason he was already out on bail when he was arrested again, and this is another thing that I kind of want to talk about, even though it's slightly unrelated. I'll try to be brief. We almost never catch murderers in the bad neighborhoods. Cops never catch the murderers. We catch the murderers for drug charges. So murderers are running around in your city doing whatever the fuck they want, and we're really catching them on drug crimes, and that needs to be addressed. Final thing before I address it. Somebody was mentioning the concept of bounty hunters. Florida in particular has one of the most perverse incentive systems for bounty hunters in the state of Florida. You can bail out criminals left, right, and center, take their property and all that kind of stuff. If they don't show up, you don't give a shit because you keep their collateral. If they do show up, awesome. Then you still take out your fee and then you pay them back. There's no incentive for them to actually go after the people that they bail out. So they bail out basically like high-level criminals all the time because they don't have to go catch them because it's such a high liability for them that they don't want to get killed and they don't want to accidentally kill the guy. So all that happens is, dumbass me making 40 grand a year as a cop because I believe in society, I have to go catch the violent person. So I do appreciate the nuance and the information that you shared, but the system, the ideal way that the system was shared is not the way that it actually functions. And that's really my main point.
So you're telling me that in Florida, bounty hunters aren't not bounty hunters, bail bondsmen aren't liable to pay the court back for bail if the person doesn't show up? Because that's how it should work.
No. The money side is completely square. You described the money side perfectly. I might have used liability improperly. So I think you might have described basically bail bondsmen going after the people who skipped bail. Unfortunately, in Florida, what's happened is that bail bondsmen have been disincentivized from doing that because they're private citizens. They're not law enforcement officers. They don't have arrest powers, or they have very limited arrest powers. So if they kill someone or hurt somebody while enforcing a violated bond, they are open to civil lawsuit. So almost all of the bondsmen in the state of Florida have stopped pursuing the people who violate their bonds, and they just leave it up to warrants units at the sheriff's office and police departments, which are very small.
Yeah, I'm sure they just let the insurance pay out to pay the court, and then they, wash their hands of it.
Yeah, and that wasn't like a gotcha or anything. That was just like I think you and LSP you described a few things of the way that it should work. And when you describe the way that it should work, it actually sounds like very common sense. These people have collateral. If they don't show up to court, they give up their collateral. This incentivizes them to show up to court. There's a partial refund. If they want to use a bondsman, they have to pay a fee. All of that, it all makes sense on when we talk about it. But there's still like these really like gross, perverse things that kind of just corrupt the system that make me deeply uncomfortable. And I don't have a good solution, by the way.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not really sold on one side or the other. Jack, if you could present me with some kind of evidence that says, eliminating cash bail leads to more people actually showing up for court. There aren't any like downsides
Yeah.
in terms of like I'd fully support getting rid of cash, but I'm not really
Yeah, I'll
heavily
drop
on one side or
some.
the other.
I'll drop some in the Discord, in the VC chat.
Counterpoints. Your camera is a little frozen. If you like leave, then come back. You can still keep talking, of course, if that's what you want to do. But like leave and come back because otherwise it's not going to reset.
Discord or gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. So these cash bails, like I think we were touching on the fact that they affect people who are of a lower income more, right? Like I mean that's the heart of the matter, right? Like what does it say? I mean, if a person's threat level is still the same, right? They still commit the same crime. Like why should they be out in the streets? Depending of one domestic violence domestic abuser can pay and one can't, right? Like they've both hurt women brutally sometimes, right? So why is it that one is allowed to rejoin society at least temporarily before their trial while the other one rots in jail?
Well, I think
So to my mind, there are only two good reasons to incarcerate somebody anyway. One is that they're a risk to other people, right? So you've got like, I don't know, somebody who's a murderer or what have you, right? Or they are likely to basically run away and not allow the justice process to work out. So they're a flight risk. Those are the only two reasons that are reasonable to incarcerate somebody. So, and if either of these are the case, then there's no amount of money that like makes it okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand what's the point in the cash bail system at all.
Well, like it's largely a relic of a time where a lot of people, if not most people, could make cash bail. Though I would also argue that that system of cash bail was largely initially developed to further disenfranchise African Americans, who were and still are largely disproportionately poor in society.
So feed black people into the prison industrial complex, you know,
exactly. I mean,
the 13th or 14th Amendment, I forget. You know, the one that abolishes slavery, but actually enshrines it in the Constitution.
That's actually two completely different amendments right there. The 13th Amendment is slavery. The 14th Amendment is its own specific thing.
Yeah, I said, was it the 13th or the 14th? Like, sorry, buddy.
But I mean, you can try to recap it afterwards. Go back and watch the VOD. That's not what you said. Go ahead and try to defend yourself.
Holy
now,
fuck,
but it's
dude!
kind of
This is an
pointless.
insignificant point.
Who gives a fuck what I said? What I meant was it the 13th or the 14th Amendment that abolished slavery but actually enshrined it? Who gives a shit? What a twatty attempt at a gotcha.
Yeah. And I don't know, a fucking American might care. Maybe that's why a foreigner shouldn't be speaking American.
And we're done with it. And we're done with it. And we are done with it. Thank you. Great. Moving on.
Grow up.
The primary issue here is that cash bail is frequently used as leverage over poorer or lower income people, workers, in order to get them to sign plea deals, because otherwise, you know, you are threatened with losing your livelihood, you're threatened with losing, you know, your ability to take care of your kids. You know, there's all kinds of reasons and additional leverage that the cash bail system gives over predominantly poor suspects. And like, again, they haven't been convicted of a crime, they're just accused of a crime. And so largely what the cash bail system does is give disproportionate power over poor people, again, poor people who are disproportionately black, to feed the prison industrial complex, where they're then both housed for profit in for-profit institutions to the tune of $50,000 or $60,000 a year of taxpayer money, and then used as incredibly cheap labor that borders on slavery. I know a lot of people quibble over that, but yes.
This is my fear, but I almost feel like a cashless bail would address it better.
Mm-hmm.
than the cash system. So this is more like my fear as somebody who worked in the law enforcement side of things. Oftentimes we don't catch murderers or violent people in the violent crimes. Often, victims and complainants are intimidated out of actually testifying for violent crimes. Either that, or they're like their family or their relations, so they don't want to testify. So sometimes cases get dropped and all that kind of stuff. And I guess my fear is that with like a cashless system, if you weren't able to document these violent crimes because they were charged and then dropped, charged and then dropped, charged and then dropped, you could hypothetically have a person who like, oh, well, they're only accused of drug dealing or they're only accused of XYZ. And that would be my fear, is that because these were like allegations or insinuations of violence that didn't result in a criminal conviction, then that would be that would be like a potential like perverse incentive for violent people to not be classified properly. And that's like that's my fear. But the cash system doesn't do any better, because it just lets rich violent people get out. So like I don't.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is I'm muddying the water, but it's something that fucks with me.
But it's also something that like we could address.
Are you classifying these people as consistently violent based on things that they were never that they posted bail for but were never convicted of? Is that what you're saying?
No, actually, a lot of these people. So the way that criminal investigations kind of work when it comes to the drug war is oftentimes you will you'll get like small level consumers. You'll flip them. You'll get video of the people who are selling. You get the video of them selling, and then you basically convict them of distribution, which is a higher level drug crime. It gets you, in the modern American system, it only gets you a few years behind bars. But these people are often accused of other crimes. So, for instance, we had a man who he threatened to kill me and my family, who was last seen driving with a murder victim the night of his murder into a different town, but the victim's family didn't cooperate. There was only one other person there who was also a drug lieutenant. So we know this guy executed somebody, but we don't have sufficient evidence to charge him or anything like that. And then same thing with another drug captain, the guy who actually posted $250,000 bond. Somebody owed him money in the city. He showed up into the city, knocked on the door. Guy came to the door but didn't open the door. He shot him through the door. The guy ended up surviving, but he didn't want to press charges. And that was kind of like where we know he's the shooter. He's hurt somebody, almost killed them, but we can't even charge him because we have no corroborating evidence. And that's where a cash bail system isn't better, but that's what I'm worried about with a cashless bail system too, is that we're not going to have sufficient evidence to actually hold the people that we need to, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
so
like
I don't have a solution. I just have problems.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I think we could try and address in a cashless bail system, right? Like, I mean, if the problem still persists under a cash bail system, then why not switch over to a cashless bail system, or switch over to this system that clearly solves a lot of underlying problems with cash bail, and then we can also still attempt to address those concerns too, right?
Yeah, I'm just worried that, like, for me, for my instinct, I'm always looking for the compromise or whatever. So like, I'm just worried like ACLU types would just be like, oh, well, that's just allegations, so let him out. And I would be like, fuck, like, really? Like, fuck
yeah, I think Danbo would call you an authoritarian.
Well, but like, like again, with a cashless bail
That's
system.
If you've been convicted of a violent crime, you're not convicted. That's it.
Well, but like with a
I don't like that argument. I got in trouble on a Destiny stream for arguing something similar.
but with a cashless bail system, you just
somebody just being accused of violent crimes constantly and be putting on some sort of violent crime register, even just being targeted.
You would hope. You would hope. But like Americans are very obsessed with the innocent until proven guilty thing. So oftentimes we're kind of like, we're constantly giving people like slates that have nothing to, like, unless you're convicted,
if you're not being
going to
convicted,
show up.
Yeah.
It shouldn't show up.
I have no clue what you guys are talking about. They do look at your prior criminal history when determining whether or not you're like
yeah, but murderers are often not convicted of murder. They're convicted of drug trafficking. That's what I'm saying.
Really hard to prove. But if they're okay, but I mean, couldn't one of the kind of check boxes be this person is a known associate of a gang, a known gang member.
That's actually a good point.
If they are, then
there is a gang
qualify.
database.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point.
So my problem with that, DB, is like who's a gang member? What counts as a gang? As you saw in California, actually, they had a gang database, like of known gang members. And after examining that database, we saw infants on there, right? Because they were seen, like an infant was like 1 degree away from an actual a member or someone else.
It's going to end up being a list of black people in a poor neighborhood is what you're going to have. And then it's the same problem.
Just look at black people.
Well, and that's kind of my point. I don't have solutions. I just have problems.
Well, I mean, like,
actually, I think what the ACLU was worried about, they were worried that with the cashless bail system, the pretrial risk assessment tools would actually lead to more people staying in prison because now they don't even have the option of bail.
Well, in Doobie, that's actually really interesting to me because, like, I borderline agree with you because when you're talking about like the homeless people who don't have addresses, they're technically a flight risk because you can't find them. When you're talking about these, these drug lords or drug lieutenants or whatever, they're risk because they have a history of violence and a rap sheet like 40 miles long. The reason why they can get out now is because of the cash bail system. But then that still feels like a perverse incentive to me. So like
I've got a solution for this, so we can get off the drug thing. Where we legalize drugs.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's still going to be organized crime. Like it'll significantly reduce it. I'll concede that. But there's still going to be organized crime.
You're saying that your job or this job of policing has gotten so difficult to a point where you are even having to almost admittedly sidestep the judiciary side of the legal system because you know that these people have already committed other crimes and you simply can't prove it, I guess.
Sorry, I'll just address that really quick. Yeah, the drug war is often used as a way to pursue violent criminals without ever actually convicting them of the more serious crimes that they're actually guilty of. So
that seems like a problem, and it also seems like the violence and everything is a large issue that has to do with the lack of healthcare funding in our country. Not to state the obvious, but
but most of the time when I come on these panel shows, like we agree like 70% because it's like let's make material conditions better, and we're all like and then we start fighting.
I was gonna ask you initially, because I was trying to envision like, okay, if we got rid of bail, like, what would we be able to hold people for? If we got rid of the institution wherein you can hold people without their consent, what would we make in its place to be okay to hold people for? Because we have to draw that line, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think in that system, everybody says, okay, we'll defund the police and then overhaul it. Well, once you overhaul it, what does that look like, honestly? And my idea is essentially that it would be on a more medical hold basis. For instance, if someone is a violent criminal, that would be classified more so as a public health concern. And so you would be able to like get to these people and still hold them and just not have it be on a cash by cash basis. Basically, if we were to make it a more healthy system, what do you think that would look like? As someone
I always like this like utilitarian calculus, but I'm not trying to poo-poo on it like at all. Like I actually think it probably takes people who are more on the macro scale to take a look at it and be like, we literally have a utilitarian calculus, like universal pre-K, high quality education, access to healthcare, access to mental health. Do that multi-generationally, get poor people to kind of, be integrated into society properly. And then at that point, we still have like the punitive or rehabilitative function of like law enforcement that still exists for the few people who are not addressed by material conditions. And then once we get into the jails, maybe it's not 100% rehabilitation because there's some people who just suck. But there's always like an opportunity for like redemption and re-entering society and removing your felony status and being reintegrated and getting work and like all that kind of shit. So just to address it quickly, because I know we're running out of time. But I think I have to leave that up to smarter people. So I have to leave that up to people who are less emotionally invested, because cops are on the ground. So we have like, it's personal, you know, like I can't say this guy is worthy of redemption because I know he's done such fucked up shit that I don't want him to be redeemed. I have like a retributive justice thing in my lizard brain that's preventing me from forgiving him. But the broader society should take the responsibility to set up a system that makes that person less likely to exist. And then like cops have to serve their micro function and society has to fulfill the macro function.
Basically, you should not be in charge of every aspect of this person's life after he comes into custody.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
actually
problem.
Yeah, I actually like to further that point. What I would want to do to some of the people who I saw do terrible things should never be on the table. And basically, like that's I'm happy that I work and live in a system that holds back my worst impulses, because I think society would have been worse if I was allowed to do what I wanted to do. But that's because I have a big dumb caveman lizard brain that wants vengeance for wrongdoing.
Just so we're clear, you think society would be worse if it was in authoritarian hands like yours?
Correct. I'm a libertarian in my soul, but my stupid lizard brain is an authoritarian for sure.
Would society be better in your hands?
Yes. But to be clear, I think it's beautiful that Counterpoints has accepted his status as a sheep, right? Some people are sheep.
Ow.
Some people are sheep. There's no shame in it. We need sheep, right? Sheep turn the wheels of society, right? The shepherds, like myself, tell society where to go. There's no shame in being a sheep.
And the sheep help feed the wolves. So we can.
Wait, Dibby, am I a sheep or am
I'm
I?
at least a ram.
shepherd?
I'm at least a ram. Okay, I got some horns.
Wait, what's your sign?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm a Sagittarius.
Yeah, you don't got no horns.
I'm a centaur. I got a bow.
Yeah, but that's not horns.
Jesus Christ.
See, I'm an Aries.
So okay.
I
Anyway,
got to make that distinction, right?
so I wanted to say though that like I agree with Mixed Vivian Wolf, in that the only reason someone should be locked up is if they're a danger to the public, or if they're a flight risk, right? But then again, I also agree with Doobie that like if we left it up to those two criteria, right? Well, then who decides who's a risk to the public, right? A judge, a singular judge, who might have interesting thoughts on minorities, right? So in the end, we might actually have more African Americans locked up under those criteria. So I'm not exactly sure. It's not easy, but I think it was a really interesting discussion. I also want to say the discussion about I was really happy with the discussion about suicide. I think you guys handled it in a respectable manner, which I was very pleased with.
I'm
but
sorry I couldn't stick around for that. I
That's
just
okay.
absolutely don't need to apologize for that. Absolutely not.
okay.
So, what we're going to do is we're going to roll onto our walk-on panel. So the stream is not ending. The stream is not ending. Oh God, the stream is not ending. We're
ending?
might be. For people who don't understand English, yes, it actually is. Should get the fuck out. But anyway, yeah, stream is not ending. So what we're going to do is what did I something? Oh, High Priestess, thank you for the raid. Sorry.
Didn't we have like a bonus topic that I was actually pretty interested in?
Right.
Closing arguments?
We can, yeah, we're going to go into closing arguments.
Okay.
High Priestess.
Closing arguments and shout outs and shit.
Oh my god. Hold on. High Priestess, thank you for the raid. Really appreciate it, everyone. Thanks for coming in from High Priestess. High Priestess is a fantastic person who I really appreciate. She has been on a few of my panels already, and we hope to see her on a few more. Okay. So we will go into closing statements now. I just wanted to get that message out before people start streaming out because the stream is not ending. Oh god. All right. Riverboat Jack, closing statement.
So like a lot of people have seemed kind of on the fence about like the effectiveness of ending cash bail. And largely, again, I have to emphasize that when in the places in the United States where we have ended cash bail, largely there has been no change in the amount of people who report to their trial, or it has improved. And on top of that, it has drastically, where it has been implemented, cut the prison population. So in places like New Jersey, once they implemented, took away cash bail, about 20% of the population of their prisons gone. So it fell by 20%. And on top of that, like when you look at there's a county in Texas, Harris County. It's one of the largest prison systems in the United States, which means it's also one of the largest prison systems in the world. Prior to the reforms that they did, about 40% of everyone who was arrested just sat in jail because they could not afford bail. After the reforms, experts are estimating about 90 to 95% of people will be released. So I think the results are pretty undoubtable in the places where we have tried this, that generally it means less people in prison, means less people in jail. And I think that overall this is something that is extremely good, and we should implement in as many places as we can, both for the working people of America and also for everyone who pays taxes in America. Because guess what? All of our taxes go to these for-profit corporations that are making money off of incarcerated people. And I find that to be an extremely sick practice that we should end, and should have ended a long time ago.
CTV.
Well, I think the room did a pretty good job of covering this topic as exhaustively as it could be covered. The idea of the bail system, I think, from a cashless point of view, it would ultimately end up just coming down to like who has the bigger why I shouldn't remain in jail argument versus somebody else. So then it really just comes down to an empathy story. At least having some type of bail set gives the judge a marker for, hey, these are the charges against you based off of X evidence that the prosecution is putting forth. And based off of your previous record, if you have one or not, they take that into consideration with the amount that they set. So, yes, I do want that ability in the hands of judges, because judges are the ones that are elected by the people, and they're the ones that ultimately have a vested interest in remaining neutral. I mean, that's the entire idea of the court, is for them to hear the case and to treat it neutrally, right? So either you have some type of faith in the system or you don't. If you don't, then you're going to always be perpetually fucked by it because you haven't bothered to learn how to work inside of it. So with that in mind, I appreciate the invitation to the panel tonight. If you want to argue with me, feel free to do so at original_CTV. And from what I hear, the stream is not ending, but the stream is ending. So that's just kind of how that works out. And for everybody else, appreciate the conversation tonight, and CTV's out.
Bye.
Bye.
CTV. We can argue against this idea about the system being neutral, theoretically so, but I would disagree. In real life, but you're gone, so that's okay. All right. So anyway, anyone else? Could you please hold on until the end before leaving? That'd be quite helpful. All right, Johnny Scarlett.
Yeah, this was exhausted thoroughly, as CTV said, but my stance at the end of this is to end bail, to at the very least end cash bail and work in some other system. Obviously, I would love to read through the data that Riverboat Jack said that they had provided, so I will further look into that probably on a stream at some point while I'm doing other research and stuff. So I'm happy to have had the opportunity to learn about that.
Counterpoints.
Yeah. Do you want to do combo, outro, and sign off, or just outro?
Do an outro afterwards.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I feel like I learned a lot. I really respect everybody on here. I'm actually really thankful for the opportunity to learn more about this stuff. I know I just came, as particularly with this subject, I came with more problems than solutions. One of the things that I picked up on from Riverboat Jack's closing statements was just that we would be able to free up more people. And as a former law enforcement officer who participated in the system, one of the things that really screwed with me was the fact that we were locking up people who didn't need to be in jail, and the people who needed to be in jail were basically getting out same day, next day. So if we were able to think of a better system that didn't screw over citizens as much, and basically freed up money and resources so we could address the truly violent criminals who were screwing up our society more aggressively and more thoroughly, then I think that would be phenomenal. So I'm very curious, and I'm actually happy to have learned a lot.
Awesome. Mixed Vivian Wolf.
I mean, if you really didn't think they needed to be locked up, you could have just not arrested them. Honestly, when he started talking about like what was it earlier, like homeless dude fucking being incarcerated just for trespassing with a warning. Like, I mean, I don't know the details of that case specifically, but if it's literally just like I don't know, trying to find somewhere to fucking sleep or something, like, just seems completely.
I made a video for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And with regards to what CTV said, the system isn't fucking impartial. It's not remotely impartial. Depending on the constituents and the people who are likely to vote in judicial elections, judges are inclined to be particularly partisan, and also inclined to lock more people up in an election year. I had a fucking whole argument about this. I think it was about a year ago, so I'm hazy on the stuff that I looked up, but I'm pretty sure most judges seem to lock more people up in an election year to show that they're being like tough on crime. So yeah, I think that system's completely fucked as well. But I think the one thing that everybody should be able to fucking agree on is that, like, whether you are incarcerated or whether you get to walk free should not depend upon your socioeconomic status. It shouldn't be like you're poor, so you're locked up, you're rich, so you get to go free. This only exists as an extension of the prison industrial complex, which seeks to suck as much fucking money out of people as possible. And it's frankly disgusting. America has one of the worst prison systems in the West, but none of our prison systems are particularly good. Like I said earlier, nobody should be incarcerated unless they present a risk to others, or they are likely to they have to be somehow coerced or forced into engaging with the rehabilitative or restorative justice process, whatever it eventually looks like. But that shit's utopian pipe dream, unfortunately.
Annabelle.
Yeah, my opinion on this comes from being a Brit living in America. In the UK system, there's no such thing as cash bail. It's just bail. You can only be detained for 24 hours without being charged with a crime, with a maximum up to, I think it's 96 hours for a violent crime. And even then, they've got to charge you with a crime. They've got to bring some kind of evidence and prove that you are either a danger to others or a danger to yourself, or that you're a flight risk. And it should be the same case in America. I don't see how you can possibly argue that you can just accuse people of violent crimes and then hold them indefinitely. That sounds like Gitmo, and you want to close that, right? There you go.
Theoretically.
Not really.
All right. So last two will be LSP and DB. I would love, because we really didn't manage to do it here, but that authoritarianism versus freedom argument, I would love to host a debate with you two, even if it's just, in fact, it could be just a one-on-one between you two. We could do it here.
You? With me and DB, or
LSP.
LSP and DB.
Yeah.
Well, what the fuck does LSP know about fucking?
I don't know what the fuck LSP knows about anything. But anyway,
it can be liberal. You don't know shit about liberty. Okay, I'd roll both of you.
Too, Vivian.
I would love that. Oh god, yes.
You wouldn't do shit, you crypto fash creep.
Oh my god.
You right up.
What the fuck?
Okay. God damn, DB's the fucking best. Oh, I love him.
It's all good. We're friendly behind the scenes.
Yeah. But that's something we should talk about because I really love to have this conversation. I think it's a really fascinating one, and I think you two or three are interesting people, you're knowledgeable enough to actually put up a really good fight for this. All right, Sneaky. Oh, sorry, Spuck. You got me. You got me. You got me. I was looking at the screen. I apologize. Oh no, I don't apologize. Fuck
Is he
you.
in chat?
He's
Fuck
in
you,
chat.
dude. I'm not the one mixing me up with other people. Fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean the cash bail conversation, it was fun, it was nuanced. Yeah, we didn't really have the freedom discussion, but I think everyone handled the discussion about as well as it could be handled. You guys want to hear a real hot take? I'm gonna blow your fucking minds right now. You guys ready for this shit? I actually think on a fundamental level that I could probably defend prison labor. That doesn't mean defend like
Boo!
See, that doesn't mean defend cash or exploitation of prison labor, but on a fundamental level, just prison labor itself. If you can justify taking prisoners and making them do work to establish a work ethic as part of rehabilitation, there's the real hot take. Let me have it.
If you pay them,
It's not even a
sure.
hot take.
If you
why
offer
shouldn't we
them
have
decent wages, sure.
Why
For
shouldn't we
no
have prison
wages,
labor?
they're already getting paid like housing and healthcare.
fuck
Oh,
it.
fuck that. No.
Hey,
Boo!
fuck you.
Boo!
You and you fucking know it. Get the fuck out.
Interesting.
Don't do crimes.
Just don't do crimes, indeed.
Don't do
All right.
crime.
DB, this sounds like a really interesting conversation, but again, I need to respect everyone's time, of course. But DB, go ahead.
So on the cash bail thing, like I said, I'm kind of torn on it just because, not because I really give a fuck about keeping poor people behind bars, but just like the outcomes, right? So if people like Counterpoint said, who are genuinely like dangerous criminals, are right now able to bail themselves out because of the system, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, right? If the concern is that we want to get dangerous people off the street, if that's the priority, how much money they have in their bank account or under the mattress, right? That shouldn't play into that at all. So I don't know. I'm a little torn on the topic. Jack sent me a ton of studies and articles to read, so I'm going to do that tonight. And by tomorrow, I might be totally against cash bail.
Fair enough. You really can't ask any more than a person who's open to have their minds changed to a look at taking it from there. All right. So I'm gonna give you guys quick outros. And of course you can shout yourself out. Riverboat Jack, thanks for coming through.
Always.
Riverboat has been here a few times. I'm assuming is this like a Steamboat Willie, Riverboat, so is that kind of a reference, like a Steamboat Willie, Riverboat Jack? No,
it's actually a nickname that I had in real life. People called me Riverboat Jack for like several years.
Okay.
Why?
It's a long story, but basically I worked at a camp. I worked as a camp counselor, and there was references made to a fictional, like completely non-existent riverboat gambler named Riverboat Jack, and it got turned into a camp like ghost story thing, and people called me Riverboat Jack for like 2 years.
I feel like it must involve like a hook and like dead bodies. Right, like it sounds like that's. I don't see any other way that could have gone.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Riverboat, tell people where they can find you.
You can find me over on twitch.tv/riverboatjack, and where I stream about politics and why I think market socialism is super based and awesome, and probably the only thing that's going to save us from climate apocalypse in the future. And also, you can find me on Twitter, also Riverboat Jack. Yeah.
Okay. And reminder to everyone, stream is not ending. Oh God, stream is not ending. So don't leave, please. Johnny Scarlett, thanks for coming through. Johnny Scarlett also joins us for many of our panels. Is an illustrious panelist, an all-star panelist. Johnny Scarlett, thanks for coming through once again. Where can people find you?
Thank you, my friend. I'll phrase this way. If you're just joining us for the rest of the stream, because, oh God, the stream is not ending, I will introduce myself to you. My name is Johnny Scarlett, and we do politics here on Twitch, you guys. Please follow the politics tag. Please follow PrimeCayes. Give him all of your Prime subs. And also, please follow me at twitch.tv/JohnnyScarlett. We're an education-oriented channel, so I'm in the business of having often pointed but sometimes open-ended discussions about anything from politics to math and science. And I hope to see you there.
Absolutely. Counterpoints. Again, the another fantastic panelist who I'm very happy to have stumbled across. Yeah, it's really nice to have you here in the community. Every time you give a good conversation, even if I disagree with your points, though, like I feel like you coming at it from a logical perspective, and you're open to hearing others, right? What more can you ask for? Really do appreciate you always being here. Counterpoints. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, so I appreciate being here. You keep sending me invites, and I'll keep being here. So don't ever hesitate if you ever need last minute, full minute, week before. Just ask, and I'll be here. So I am on YouTube. That's the primary platform that I do it. You can just YouTube Counterpoints, have some interesting debates and all that kind of stuff. I am an ex-cop and a former Marine, and I am posting a video in the chat right now called What Cops Do Wrong. And for Mixed Vivian Wolf, who was curious about the situations for homeless people and kind of like, I am a believer in systemic racism. I am a believer in cops not willingly doing evil, but basically doing evil because they're a part of a system. And that's just a little 20-minute video talking about that. And I have cop stuff, military stuff, politics stuff, all on the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter at Conorpoints, CONORPOINTS. I just want to say to the other panelists, it was a sincere pleasure speaking with you. I think you're all smart. You're all killers. And I really do enjoy this channel a lot. So thank you for having me.
Also, your beard is good.
Thank you.
Actually, you do have a nice beard.
Great to learn I'm a killer, but that's something I'm going to have to mull over, I guess.
Vivian, just blame it on the Antifa.
I can't. I am the Antifa.
CEO of Antifa.
And for everyone, if you have a link that you want people to follow you at, feel free to throw it in my chat. You're free to do that. Just throw it in there so people can find you. All right, LSP, thanks for coming through. LSP, we always come in with the facts. Like from a fucking liberal perspective, but like still, they're facts, I guess. Whatever. I guess those facts don't care about my feelings, and I have negative feelings towards them. But Liberal Sanity Project, thanks for being here, my friend. We always appreciate when I see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You've always been fair. Actually, wait, quick question. If me and CTV were both drowning at the same time in the middle of a lake and you had a rowboat, who would you save?
CTV?
Yeah.
Not Counterpoint. I thought it was like, okay.
I'd go grab a burger.
Yeah, you'd have to think about Counterpoints. Was either me, am I getting saved, or me?
What? No, but I, you know what? I'm bad with these decisions, right? So I would I would haul, and I would watch you both drown. But
okay, I had an awesome what's up?
Oh, I was just going to answer it for him. CTV's an ANCAP and a libertarian, so he needs a bootstrap, so he needs to swim on his own, so you would have to save LSP.
True.
Yeah,
the answer's clear. And he's not fucking here, so LSP all the way. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've great conversations. Johnny, it's always been a good talk with you. Counterpoints, I actually really do like talking to you. I think we should talk more. Riverboat Jack, I've never met you, but I actually really enjoyed our talks.
Yeah.
I'm surprised by how much we wound up converging, because I think you're like a total like lefty shill, and I'm like apparently like a shit lib. You're all wonderful, including you, Vivian, bitch. Basically, yeah. Fucking I do too. Like you're. Okay, real quick. Channel I'm shouting out is a channel called Post Comprehension. It's they're a smaller channel. They do really solid like presentation and essays, and I mean they're a little left for my taste, but they do good work and they're worth checking out. So if you give anyone a sub, like go give them a sub. Fuck me, my channel's shit. It's dying. Don't sub to me. Sub to him.
Indeed, fuck LSP. All right, I think that's a message we can all get on board with. Dianabo, thanks for being here, buddy. Came in last minute, but he does that. Like, he's really kind enough to share his time with us. I mean, he's a busy man. He's got a family and all that, but still, he decided to neglect them for us, and I do appreciate that. Dianabo, thank you for being here.
Yeah, that's Prime's way of saying he invited me on because he had nobody else and he needed someone last minute. That's all that is. But yeah, it's good to be back. I've had like a 2-month hiatus, and it's good to be back, jumping on panels, talking to everyone again. I miss you, Viv. I miss hanging around in Mindwave streams so much. I don't know what's happening
Right.
there. We need to get that
Those
back
were the good days.
somehow. Yeah. Lately, I've been playing Twitch things. Come and hang out and watch me do karaoke. Oh, and we're also being racist on stream as well. So what I do is I watch these cut videos where people are judging people based on their ethnicity, and I comment on them and profile people. So join me and we can be racist together too.
Oh, that's fun! Hooray! All right,
Cringe.
So Mix Vivian Wolf. She already knows. She already knows how much I appreciate her. Mix Vivian Wolf is a good friend of this channel. Mix Vivian Wolf, I'm always happy to have. When she comes to Mix Vivian Wolf, I'm always prepared to have to fight her for like the mic because she won't fucking let it go. But Mix Vivian Wolf, thank you for coming through once again. As always, you are always welcome to be here, friend.
Thank you very much. I am, as Prime just mentioned, Mix Vivian Wolf on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm an anti-fascist historian and extremist researcher, and I mostly talk about cults, QAnon, that sort of shit, and extremism. Far-right organizations and terror orgs and all that sort of shit. If you're interested in that sort of stuff, you should absolutely follow me on all 3 platforms, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, Mix Vivian Wolf. Thanks very much.
Finally, last but certainly not least, right? We have a man who I think is the only man who could wrangle the den of scum and villainy that is the Politics Discord server. We have Doobie, who has proven himself to be the biggest bastard of them all, I think, right? Which is why no one can unseat him from the very top, where he belongs, over at Politics Discord server. Everyone, go follow that, join up into that Discord server. You will always find someone to argue with. I put the link in chat. Politics Discord server. It's a fantastic place, a lot of fun there, and led by an interesting guy who I think would be the tyrant we all deserve. Doobie, thank you for being here.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on. I think most of you are interesting people. Yeah.
Wait, who's not interesting? Don't be a cuck. Who's not interesting?
Well, I still don't think Denobo knows what authoritarianism is.
Oh, okay.
Denobo? Okay.
Dana,
But the rest of you are pretty cool. I've known Vivian for a while. She's pretty cool, even though I disagree with her about everything. I've spoken to Johnny a couple times. Pretty cool. Very nice person. LSP is wrong about half of everything, but that means he's right about the other shit, so that's okay. And Jack, first time I spoke to Jack, very intelligent person. Also wrong about a lot of shit, but I mean, not everybody can be like me. That's not a big deal. So yeah, join up to the server, discord.gg/politics, and tag me if you want to debate the freedom shit. I'm around all the time, and I will tell you why freedom doesn't exist and that you're stupid for believing it does. And also, I'll explain what I mean when I say that you're a sheep, because most of you are, and it's okay.
Okay. So, all right, that'll be it. We are going to run over to our walk-on panel where audience members like yourself can join in, have a discussion with us about everything that we talked here, or other things. So we're going to do that. Anybody here is welcome to join. If not, that's okay. Thank you for spending some of your time and effort, your knowledge with my community. It's very much appreciated, and we want you all back in the future at some point in time. All right, thanks for being here.